Rebirth as a Russian tycoon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Investing in Marvel Movies. A week later, the Royal Malaysian Air Force sent a reply, saying that they were interested in visiting Russia and discussing the order of fighter jets. After receiving the news, Mavey immediately sent someone to contact the Russian 1564th Air Force Base. That was the last time he filmed the trailer of Avengers, and asked someone to help blow up the airport. Mavey, who understands the bundling of interests, will never eat alone. Especially under the premise of cooperating with the military. Eating alone means destruction. So he needs to cooperate with the Russian Navy as an introducer between the two armies to gain benefits. Selling fighter jets to make money is small, but making friends with the military is big. Only in this way can he have a powerful backer. While sending people to contact the Russian Air Force Base, Mavey will also meet with the producer and director of the film company from the United States that afternoon. Due to his different identity and status, he does not need to travel all the way to the United States this time. Instead, he will wait directly in Russia for the other party to come, including the airport pickup. Mavey does not need to make it very grand, just send 2 BMWs or Mercedes-Benzes. After all, there are a lot of film companies vying to cooperate with Marvel. Not only Disney, but almost all the 8 major American film studios want to get a piece of the pie. Master, the producer and director from the United States have arrived at the airport. It is estimated that they will arrive here in about 3/4 of an hour. The personal bodyguard received feedback from the team and reported to Mavey. Well, I know. At this time, Mavey was still feeding the little tiger. Seeing that Winnie, the little bear who also wanted to eat milk, was anxious and kept scratching there. Don't worry, it will be your turn later, Foodie. Mavey smiled and scratched Winnie's nose, and the itchy polar bear sneezed immediately. 40 minutes later, 2 black Mercedes-Benz stopped accurately in front of Mavey's mansion. Then the car door opened, and 2 American men in their 40s walked out of the car. Among them, the one wearing a khaki suit was the famous American producer, Joe Alvo. He is one of the main promoters of Hollywood movies entering the explosive era. The famous movies he produced include Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, The Matrix 1 and so on. He is a real gold medal producer. As for the one walking next to Joe Alvo, it is the director of the Evil Dead series, Sam. Compared with Joe Alvo's status in the film and television industry, director Sam is much inferior. He doesn't know why Marvel would find him, but this is an opportunity for him, and he must seize it well. Mr. Joe Alvo, Mr. Sam, please follow me. My young master is resting upstairs, and he will come down soon. Butler Ivan received the 2 guests from the United States. He led the 2 to the living room, and then ordered the servants to pour black tea for the 2. Thank you. Joe Alvo and Sam hurriedly thanked. This is the first time for the 2 to visit the home of a Russian tycoon. Joe Alvo, who is quite discerning, can see at a glance that the decoration of the living room of Mavey's house has cost a lot of money, including the famous paintings hanging on the wall and the chandeliers hanging on the ceiling. They are all very expensive art treasures. It can be seen that the owner of the house is very wealthy. The 2 of them sat in the living room anxiously, waiting for Mavey to appear. After about 5 minutes, they saw a young Russian man in black clothes walking down the stairs. The young man was too young. If it weren't for the servants around him, they were all wearing the prescribed uniforms. Otherwise, Joe Alvo and Sam would never have thought that the white Russian man walking down the stairs was the chairman of Marvel, Mavey. Hello, Chairman Mavey. I have heard of you for a long time. I'm Joe Alvo, a Hollywood producer. As soon as Mavey appeared in front of the 2, Joe Alvo immediately stood up with a smile and shook hands with Mavey. Hello, Mr. Mavey, I'm Sam. Director Sam, who was half a beat slower in reaction, was a little nervous and spoke a little stumblingly. After all, at this time, he was just a small director, and in front of a super rich man like Mavey, he was nothing. Hello, both of you. Please take a seat. Although Mavey looked very young, He gradually developed the aura of a big boss through his experience in dealing with the military of various countries. No one dared to underestimate him. Okay, Mr. Maweli. By the way, Chairman Maweli, I heard from your subordinates that you are planning to officially start filming the Marvel series of movies recently. I would like to ask you, how much budget do you plan to invest? Which Marvel hero will you choose as the theme of the movie? After sitting down again, producer Joe Owo asked Maweli directly. However, just as he was asking the question, he suddenly saw a furry little guy with tiger stripes running down the stairs in his peripheral vision. Then, a pure white polar bear chased after the little guy, obviously in a playful and happy atmosphere. Old, tiger, and polar bears? Joe Owo's first reaction was to be stunned. Although Americans also raise tigers, polar bears, this is really rare. Maweli also noticed the two little guys who were naughty at home. So he couldn't help but look at the servants, signaling them to stop making trouble, otherwise the house would be demolished. After receiving the instructions, the servants hurriedly chased Winnie and little Tigger. Only Maweli was left, and he coughed slightly helplessly and said, ahem, for Marvel heroes, let's shoot Spider-Man first. After all, with the current special effects technology, it's still too difficult to shoot Iron Man in the Avengers. As for the movie budget, this is actually my first attempt at Marvel, and the investment may not be very much. Let's invest 200 million first. Maweli's calm voice, as soon as it fell, saw Joe Elvo and Sam sitting in front of them, who were shocked by Maweli before they could react. Ah, didn't you say that it wouldn't be a lot to invest in the first movie? You actually opened your mouth and asked for 200 million. Producer Joe Elvo was a little scared by Maweli's generosity. He only got $63 million from Warner Brothers for shooting The Matrix 1 2 years ago. This amount of money is more than twice the amount that Maweli invested. Chairman Maweli, can I confirm with you? The 200 million you just mentioned, is it US dollars? Or, rubles? Joe Owo suddenly thought of the currency issue and had not confirmed it yet. What if the other party said rubles? Then the 200 million would instantly become 2 million US dollars. Chapter 127 representing the Russian military. I'm talking about $200 million. Maweli couldn't help but make it clear. Although he is a Russian, he definitely doesn't use rubles. Because during this period in 2000, the ruble exchange rate could fall by hundreds of basis points a day. 1 basis point is 0.01%. Oh, that's it. Chairman Maweli. Okay, I get it. Spider-Man has a budget of $200 million. Joe Elvo quickly followed Maweli's words. As a film producer, it is his job to confirm the cost and budget. No, you may be wrong about one thing, Mr. Joe Elvo. I will use this $200 million to shoot Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2. This is the script for the two series of movies. After Maweli finished speaking, he signaled the servant to take the printed script to Joe Elvo and Sam to watch. As a reborn person, Maweli is not a sucker. The cost of shooting Spider-Man 1 in his previous life was about $100 million. The global box office was as high as $820 million. As for Spider-Man 2, the filming cost remains unchanged, and the global box office is about $800 million US dollars. So it is reasonable for Maweli to invest 200 million. Moreover, he asked the screenwriter to write the movie script based on his memories of his previous life. Joe Elvo and Sam, who were sitting in front of him, opened the script with a little hesitation. It was the first time they met an investor as confident as Maweli. He invested in shooting two series of movies at once, and the scripts were already ready. What if the first one failed at the box office? Just as Joe Elvo opened the script with such doubts. However, the fascinating plot in the script made him unable to stop reading it. 10 minutes later, Joe Elvo exhaled lightly and then slowly closed the script. It must be said that from his professional producer's perspective, the two scripts provided by Maweli can be said to be of very high quality and very much in line with the preferences and tastes of North American audiences. I believe that, as long as they are filmed smoothly, there will be no problem in recovering the cost. Chairman Maweli, I have read these two scripts of yours, and they are really well written. Excuse me, which screenwriter wrote them? Joe Owo said to Maweli with praise. At the same time, He was very curious about who wrote such an excellent script. It doesn't matter who wrote it, as long as it can be made into a good movie. Maweli replied with a smile. Who else could have written these two scripts? Of course, he, the culprit who changed the parallel time and space, wrote it. Due to the butterfly effect, Maweli found that he had changed many things in the world. This also directly led to many things he was familiar with not appearing at the exact time point. So Maweli felt it necessary to try to change the world to the way he was familiar with without damaging himself. Yes, Chairman Maweli, you are right. Producer Joe Owo quickly changed his words and flattered. In the eyes of wealthy investors, actors, directors, and producers are mostly working for them. Because investors earn box office shares, while directors and actors get film remuneration, with a maximum dividend of 3% or 5%. Director Sam, who sat silently by the side, and had not been able to speak, could only drink black tea with an awkward smile throughout the whole process. He didn't know why Maweli chose him to be the director of the film. In fact, what Sam didn't know was that he was the one who directed the Spider-Man trilogy in his previous life. And later, he also cooperated with Blizzard to shoot the much anticipated World of Warcraft movie version. After discussing the basic cooperation, Maweli also officially hired the two as partners of his Marvel pictures to shoot Spider-Man 1 and 2 together. The total cost of the two films is $200 million. After paying this fee, $200 million deposited into Marvel Pictures at one time, Maweli's bank account was left with only a pitiful $117 million. This money is spent so quickly, and if you are not careful, it will become 8 digits again. But this time Maweli is not worried. Because just yesterday, he had received news that the Russian Air Force had officially issued an invitation to the Royal Malaysian Air Force, willing to welcome their arrival next Friday, which is 8 days later. In addition to the Malaysian Air Force General, Maharap, the Malaysian Defense Minister, Tun Rahman, also accompanied the military on this trip. The reason why two military figures were dispatched in succession was that the Malaysian government attached great importance to this fighter jet transaction. As early as the 1970s, Malaysia's military strength was ranked first in Southeast Asia. But now, it is very helpless. Not only is it far ahead of Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, even Myanmar, Singapore, Cambodia, and Laos have the meaning of latecomers. This makes the Malaysian military and government very worried about the future. After all, according to this trend, if it continues, maybe in another 5 or 10 years, they Malaysia, oh no, they Malaysia, are afraid that they will be abused by a pocket country like Brunei. At 10 o'clock on Friday morning, a pure white Dassault Falcon flagship aircraft landed smoothly at Saratov Airport. The Malaysian flag was printed on the side of the plane. It was obvious that their Royal Air Force and the Minister of Defense had come. When the Dassault Falcon plane slowly stopped at the airport platform, the cabin door opened. A middle-aged man in a suit, with a dark complexion, a black and white beard, and a big back hair, walked down from the plane. This middle-aged man is the Malaysian Defense Minister, Tun Rahman. And the middle-aged soldier who followed Tun Rahman down the plane was naturally the Royal Malaysian Air Force General, Maharap. The reason why the two militaries met at Saratov Airport is that Saratov is a state of the Russian Federation, where there is a strategic base heavily guarded by Russia, the Engels Air Force Base. Its two 160 and 295 long-range strategic bombers can perform patrol missions throughout the Western Hemisphere, and almost most of Russia's strategic bombers are deployed here. So it can show the strength of the Russian Air Force in a very shocking way. Let these two senior officials from Malaysia appreciate the power of military power. When the Minister of Defense and the Air Force General got off the plane one after another, I saw a white Russian youth in a suit getting down from a jeep not far away. This young man was naturally the middleman of this transaction, Maweli. However, this time, he was a representative of the Russian military, accompanying the Russian Air Force Major General to receive the arrival of the Malaysian military. Chapter 128 Mercedes-Benz Custom Armor, Mikoyan Design Bureau. Hello, Minister Tun Rahman, Admiral Maharap. This is our first meeting. Please allow me to introduce you. The person next to me is from our Engels Air Force Base in Russia, Major General Andrei. Mawey introduced the two parties with ease. As his status and background continued to rise, the things he could participate in, and the attention he received, became more and more important. When trading ships with the Indian Navy before, Mawey came in as the chairman of the shipyard. This time, he was directly selected as a representative to participate in the reception with the Russian Air Force Major General. It can be seen that the Russian military trusts Mawey and attaches great importance to him. Hello, Major General Andrei. Hello, Mr. Mawey. Thank you very much for your reception today. Defense Minister Duraman said, stretching out his right hand and shaking hands with Mawey in the other two. Then it was Admiral Mahara who came forward and exchanged a few words with the two. In order to make this cooperation look more grand, Mawey deliberately drove over his two newly purchased Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG luxury customized armored vehicles. On the surface, the two cars are exactly the same as the Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG, but the safety has been improved by several levels. The vehicle was built by the Incas and is purely handmade. The bulletproof level is B6. After being tested by the German Ballistic Testing Center, it can block the impact of a rifle with a caliber of 7.62 x 51, withstand fire, grenades, and heavy ammunition bombardment of M80. In addition to the efficient bulletproof and explosion-proof performance, the interior of Mawey's two Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG customized armored vehicles is also quite luxurious. Not only does it include satellite TV, heated leather seats, coolers, entertainment media centers and other facilities. Even a black box was specially customized to observe the performance of the car at any time, just in case. Since Mawey's customized armored vehicle has not yet been circulated on the market, Minister Duraman and Admiral Mahara have never seen such a handsome and extremely safe luxury armored vehicle for the first time. Mr. Mawey, your two Mercedes-Benz bulletproof vehicles are really good. Defense Minister Duraman couldn't help but give Mawey a thumbs up. If conditions permit, he would like to order one from Mercedes-Benz after returning home. Of course, it would be best if they could get one for the Malaysian head of state and prime minister. Thank you, Minister Tulraman. It was by chance that I ordered these two cars from the Mercedes-Benz manufacturer. Mawey still maintained his modesty and restraint. Minister Tulraman, Admiral Mahara, and Major General Andrei were very comfortable to hear. In fact, the three of them must know that such a luxurious customized armored vehicle could not be ordered by chance. If it weren't for Mawey's close relationship with the Mercedes-Benz manufacturer, cars that are not yet circulated on the market would not be customized for him at all. Mr. Mawey, you are too modest. It is really rare for a young man like you to be so modest. Admiral Mahara praised Mawey. He remembered that, when he was as young as Mawey, he was completely ignorant of the world. He almost lost his life because of being too ostentatious. Thank you, Admiral Mahara. Mawey smiled and sent the two big men from Malaysia to the car. Then he and Major General Andrei sat in the Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG armored car behind. When the Mercedes-Benz bulletproof car started slowly, Major General Andrei, who was sitting in the car, asked Mawey, Mr. Mawey, what do you think is the success rate of this cooperation with the Malaysian military? How many fighter jets can they buy? Since Mawey sent 5 2 series bombers to the Russian Air Force 2 weeks ago, the relationship between his family and the Air Force has become closer. Even the news was passed up and was highly praised by the commander of the Russian Air Force. I don't know if Pu 20th praised Mawey after hearing it. The success rate depends on the performance of the pilots, Major General Andrei. Anyway, I know that Malaysia does have this demand. Mawey replied with a smile. This order transaction is also very important to him. After all, the money in the bank is about to become 8 figures again. Don't worry about the performance, Mr. Mawey. These pilots are all selected by me personally, and there will be no mistakes. Major General Andrei promised solemnly. This business is also very important to their Russian Air Force. I heard before that Mawey helped the Russian Navy to get a $1 billion order from India. This made the Air Force eager to try, and they were looking forward to Mawey's transformation. Speaking of the Russian Air Force, we have to mention the two major aircraft design bureaus in Russia, Sukhoi Design Bureau and its competitor Mikoyan Design Bureau. Sukhoi Design Bureau mainly develops Su-24 and Su-27 fighters, and Mikoyan Design Bureau develops Mi-29 fighters. It can be seen from the name of the Design Bureau. There are inextricable connections between the Mikoyan Design Bureau and Ma Wen's Mikoyan family. It's just that in this big family, Ma Wen's power and status are not the highest. Otherwise, his parents would not have left only a small military factory for him. Okay, Major General Andre, then I'm relieved, Ma Wen said, nodding. Whether it's the Navy or the Air Force, Russia's military industry as a whole has reached the point of collapse. Take his family's Mikoyan Design Bureau for example. Currently, it is seriously lacking in research and development funds, and is unable to develop a high-level MiG fighter. The Mercedes-Benz convoy, under the protection of the military, sped along. All the roads they reached had been blocked in advance. 2 Tiger armored vehicles led the way in front, and the scene was so cool. Almost 45 minutes later, the Mercedes-Benz convoy drove into the border of Engels Air Force Base. As early as the Dassault Falcon in Malaysia flew into Russian airspace, the Engels Air Force Base Center observed their movements, including landing at the airport and then changing to a Mercedes-Benz. Every move was monitored and protected by the base. At this time, a Russian Air Force colonel reported to an old man standing in front of an electronic screen, "Admiral, Major General Landray and Mr. Ma Wen have brought the Malaysian Defense Minister, Air Force General, into our base. Well, in 15 minutes, we will officially start the flight mission," the old man said to the colonel with his hands behind his back and a calm expression. "Yes, Admiral." After hearing the order, the colonel led his men out of the command center to prepare for the task assigned by his superiors. At the same time, in front of the gate of Engels Air Force Base, the Mercedes-Benz convoy had passed the checkpoint and entered the base smoothly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Aerial Show, Military Exercises. When the car slowly stopped at a platform, Malaysian Defense Minister Tulku Rahman and Air Force General Maharaj opened the door and walked out of the car. As soon as the two got out of the Mercedes, they saw 6 brand new Mi-29 fighters parked on the runway in the distance. The aluminum alloy body, plus titanium alloy material, combined with the streamlined design of the fighter, made them look particularly eye-catching. Ma Wen also walked out of the Mercedes AMG and came to the front of the Malaysian military. At this time, Defense Minister Rahman deliberately asked Ma Wen, "Mr. Ma Wen, the 6 fighter jets parked in the distance are your country's Mi-29. Seeing that the defense minister was interested in the fighter jets, Ma Wen directly introduced them to him. "Yes, that's right, Minister Rahman. The 6 fighter jets you see are the Mi-29 designed by my Mikoyan Design Bureau. It uses the RD-33 turbofan engine, dual axis, low bypass ratio, and a unit structure with a total of 11 units. The maximum thrust of a single unit is 50 kilonewtons, which is 5 metric tons." After listening to Ma Wen's introduction, the defense minister and Admiral Maharaj pondered for a moment, and then asked him, "Then Mr. Ma Wen, how much does your country's Mi-29 fighter jet cost? Can you tell us roughly?" Seeing that the two began to ask for a quote, Ma Wen deliberately kept it a secret, and said with a smile, "Minister Dulaman, Admiral Maharaj, let's not talk about the price of the Mi-29 fighter jets in a hurry. It just so happens that our Russian Air Force has prepared a very exciting aerial show for you. I wonder if you are interested in watching it?" Minister Dulaman and Admiral Maharaj thought for a while, then nodded to Ma Wen and said, "Aerial show. Are you going to use these 6 Mi-29s? "Sure, Mr. Ma Wen, we are very interested. Aircraft aerial show is a show similar to the nature of a military parade, which all leaders will like." Ma Wen nodded after hearing it, and then glanced at Major General Andre standing next to him. Receiving Ma Wen's sight, Andre used a military walkie-talkie to say to the 6 fighter pilots who were ready to go under the platform, "The guests are here, you can get ready to start." As soon as the voice fell, 6 Russian pilots who were ready to go climbed onto the Mi-29 fighter jets in a well-trained manner. Then within 10 minutes, the 6 MiG-29 fighters on the runway roared their engines and soared into the sky. Minister Tulraman and Admiral Maharaj, who were standing on the platform, couldn't help but look up and follow the fighters. After the 6 MiG fighters flew to a certain height, they began their flight performance. Tumbling, somersaults, and low altitude turns. At the same time, deep blue smoke was sprayed from the tail of the aircraft, making the performance even more gorgeous. Mr. Mawey, your country's aerial performance is really wonderful. Before the performance was over, Defense Minister Tulraman couldn't help but praise Mawey. Thank you, Minister Tulraman. This kind of flight performance was the first time Mawey had seen it with his own eyes, and the scene could be described as stunning. Especially when the fighters were flying at low altitudes, the violent roar of the engines could make people's blood boil. After the perfect aerial performance, almost all the Malaysian officers present nodded and applauded. They were obviously very satisfied with the performance. But, at this moment, an unexpected accident happened suddenly. That is, 4 light Grade E-62 main battle tanks suddenly drove over from the far side of the platform. The rumbling sound of the metal chain immediately stimulated the Malaysian officers on the platform. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Mr. Mawey, these tanks are... Defense Minister Tulraman was completely confused about the situation. It was an air show before, and it was fine to watch. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, tanks were actually coming. What is going on? Minister Tulraman, these 4062 main battle tanks are the second performance prepared by our Russian military for you. It can also be called a military exercise. I wonder if you are interested in watching it live. Mawey asked the Malaysian military in a light voice. The air flight just now can only be regarded as an appetizer at best. What is going to be performed next is the main course. Military exercise? Sure, Mr. Mawey. Will it start later? How will it be carried out? Hearing that the Russian Air Force was going to hold a military exercise, Malaysian Defense Minister Tulraman and Air Force General Maharaj were naturally willing to watch. After all, a country like Malaysia, which is militarily weak, rarely has the opportunity to see a large-scale military exercise with their own eyes. This is a very valuable experience for them, and at the same time they can also understand Russia's military strength. Of course, there is no reason to refuse. Well, that's about it. In order to ensure everyone's safety, please get back in the armored vehicle first, and the exercise will start soon. Mawey did not answer the question of the Minister of Defense directly. Instead, he motioned everyone to sit in the bulletproof vehicle to avoid being injured by the artillery fire later, which would be bad. Defense Minister Tulraman and Air Force General Maharaj couldn't help but look at each other at this time. They all knew that the Russian army was fierce. But I don't know what the military exercise that Mawey mentioned is like. Could it be that the Air Force blows up all 4 tanks in the distance? An officer next to General Maharaj couldn't help but whispered. If that's the case, then the Russians are really too fierce. His words happened to be heard by the Admiral. So Maharaj looked at him and reminded him, Major, please pay attention to your words and deeds. You represent the image of our Malaysian military. Don't you see that there are still people in the tank? The reason why General Maharaj educated his subordinates in this way was because there were still soldiers in the tank. If it blew up, the commander would be brought to the military court. However, not long after he finished speaking, the covers of the 4062 main battle tanks were opened by the Russian soldiers inside. Then 2 tank soldiers climbed out of each tank and hurriedly fled the scene. Admiral Maharaj, who saw this scene, felt his face burning and couldn't save his face. The major standing in front of him wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to laugh, and his face was about to be suffocated. Ahem. Get in the car. Get in the armored car. Admiral Maharaj said to his subordinates with a serious expression. P.S. Announce the group number 515,625,020. Chapter 130. The Insane Russian Military Exercise. He was so embarrassed, and he was embarrassed in front of the Russian Air Force. I really hope they don't understand Malaysian. Compared to Admiral Maharaj's embarrassment, Defense Minister Tulraman stared at the 4 tanks in the distance without blinking. Then he asked Mawey in a deep voice, Mr. Mawey, your Russian military exercises, are they really tanks? Seeing the defense minister asked again seriously, Maweli had to shrug his shoulders and replied, I guess so, Minister Tulraman. Anyway, it's just 4062 tanks. Maweli finished his words with a calm expression. But Minister Tulraman, who was standing in front of him, was suddenly surprised and kept looking at him. The meaning in his eyes was clearly saying, sure enough, military powers are different. Anyway, it's just 4 tanks. It's so easy to say. You have to know that their Malaysian army has only 28 tanks so far. Nearly 1/3 of them are old-fashioned light tanks that will be broken by a single shot. They can only drive out to pretend. If they dare to fight with real guns and live ammunition, they will definitely be finished. I didn't expect that in a military exercise in Russia, they would be so crazy as to blow up 4 main battle tanks. This made Tulraman really want to say, can you not blow them up first? Just give them to us in Malaysia. Of course, for the sake of national dignity and face, Minister Tulraman would naturally not say everything in his heart. However, the desire revealed in his eyes betrayed him very well. When Minister Tulraman and others got into the Mercedes-Benz G63 armored vehicle in silence, 10 minutes later, he faintly heard the whistling sound of a fighter jet breaking through the air above the car. Then, before the officers in the car could react, everyone saw a MiG-29 fighter jet diving at a subsonic low altitude, quickly approaching the 4 main battle tanks in the distance. In a flash, 4 flames suddenly appeared under the MiG-29 fighter jet. Then, the 4 air rockets hanging on the wings flew towards the 4 tanks below at lightning speed. It was said that it was too late, and before the people in the car could blink, they saw the flying air rockets accurately hit the 4062 tanks on the ground. Boom. 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 Almost at the same time, the 4 tanks exploded in unison. Terrifying and hot flames instantly emerged from the tank body. The power generated by the explosion shook the T-62 tank violently. In an instant, it was blown to pieces and black smoke was emitted. The strong blasting airflow blew the surrounding dust, weeds, and gravel away, forming a violent hurricane visible to the naked eye. The fragmented wreckage of the tank seemed to be tortured by a monster, and it was horrible to look at. Minister Tulraman, Admiral Maharan and others who were in the Mercedes-Benz watched everything that happened. At this moment, everyone had only one thought in their mind, that is, such a powerful and destructive weapon, even if they had to borrow money, they had to buy it. A MiG fighter can deal with 4 main battle tanks at the same time, and each one is a precise strike. If Malaysia has these fighters, then other Southeast Asian countries around it will never dare to invade them. National defense security is also fully guaranteed. When the afterglow of the aviation rocket gradually dissipated, Minister Tulraman and Admiral Maharan and others also walked out of the armored vehicle one after another. At this time, Minister Tulraman couldn't wait to find Maweli and took the initiative to ask him, Mr. Maweli, may I ask, how much does your Russian Air Force's MiG-29 fighter sell for? We in Malaysia really want to buy this fighter. Maweli, who walked out of the Mercedes-Benz armored vehicle, smelled the burnt smell in the air as soon as he opened the door. He couldn't help but cough lightly, and then said to the Malaysian military, Minister Tulraman, General Maharab, the MiG-29 fighter jet of our Russian Air Force is sold at a price of $36 million per aircraft. If your country is willing to buy more, we can apply for a discount for you. Hearing that buying more can get a discount, Defense Minister Tulraman thought carefully and asked Maweli, Mr. Maweli, how many MiG fighter jets can be discounted? How much is the discount? If you buy 20 MiG-29 fighter jets, I estimate that you can apply for a 95% discount. If you buy 30 MiG fighter jets, it is estimated that you can get a discount of about 85%. Maweli said to the 2 people in a persuasive manner. In the previous life, the Royal Malaysian Air Force purchased 18 MiG-29 fighter jets from Russia in 1994. In this life, Maweli decided to find a way to let them buy a few more. It would be best to get 30 at a time, which would be completely awesome. After hearing the offer, Minister Tulraman and Admiral Maharan could not help but look at each other again. One MiG fighter jet costs $36 million, and 20 MiGs are discounted by 95%, which is $684 million, and 30 MiGs are discounted by 15%, with a total price of $918 million. In terms of cost performance, it is definitely the most cost effective to buy 30 fighter jets. But, their Malaysian government simply cannot afford so much money at one time. In short, they want to buy planes, but they are short of money. Maweli saw the expressions of the two Malaysian senior officials, and then he kindly reminded them, if the funds are limited for the time being, it doesn't matter. Our Russian government is willing to provide loans to your country. Buying arms in Russia is very humane. The Russians directly give you loans and let you buy. This not only stimulates consumption, but also earns interest. Anyway, if you can't pay back the loans between countries, there are ways to recover the money. It's not like a personal loan. You don't have the money, but you have to live. You can do it yourself. After careful consideration, Minister Tulraman and Admiral Mahara were very tempted by Maweli's proposal. However, they still have to go back and discuss it with the Malaysian head of state. Let's see how to buy it. Mr. Maweli, thank you very much for your proposal. Why don't we go back and think about it first? I can assure you that within 3 weeks, we will definitely give your country a clear answer. Defense Minister Tulraman vowed to Maweli. Okay, then wait for your good news, Minister Tulraman. Admiral Mahara. Maweli could feel that this deal was probably a done deal. But how many Mijis the other party would buy, only God knows. PS. An advertisement. The group has been established. Everyone is welcome to urge for updates, chat, and flood the group. There are cute and beautiful girls in the group. If you don't like the girls, the author can RQZ women's clothing. Group number 515,625,020. Chapter 131 Kremlin. Summoned by Putin. After sending off this potential customer from Southeast Asia, Maweli once again lived a life like a rich young master. He would play with bears and tigers when he had nothing to do, fly to the United States to deal with company matters, and then have a date with Jennifer. His life was quite comfortable. 2 weeks passed quickly. Maweli, who was on vacation in the Maldives with his goddess, suddenly received a call from Russia. Hello, is this Mr. Maweli? This is the Russian Air Force Command. I have good news to tell you. The Royal Malaysian Air Force is willing to order 26 MiG-29N single-seat fighters and 4 MiG-29 nub-to-seat combat trainers from us. The total order value is $918 million. Hearing the news from the other end of the satellite phone, Maweli clenched his fist with excitement. Of the 30 MiG fighters purchased by the Malaysian Air Force, 12 were provided by him. That is, they were bought cheaply from Ukraine for $1 million. These 12 MiG-29 fighters are in stock, so they must be traded at full price, with a total price of $367 million. Excluding costs, Maweli can make a net profit of $355 million. With this money, plus his $117 million deposits in the bank, that's $472 million. Now he can spend money again. And he can spend more fiercely. Because the Variag aircraft carrier of the Black Sea shipyard will have customers coming to negotiate in a while. This will definitely be a huge order at that time. However, according to the memory of the previous life, the Variag aircraft carrier was forcibly detained for several years when it passed through Turkish waters on the way to delivery. If this happens again in this life, Maweli will probably have to find a connection to crush these people selling Turkish ice cream. After all, Ukraine in this life has not destroyed its nuclear warheads. Russia in this life has not had a gap with Ukraine. If Turkey dares to seize the aircraft carrier of these two brothers, then he will definitely be in trouble. After finishing the call, Maweli, who was lying on the beach of the island, handed the satellite phone to the bodyguard. Then he turned his head, but suddenly found that the goddess Jennifer was looking at him with a little resentful look. It was obvious that Maweli would fly away again after a short time. Where are you going this time? Jennifer pursed her lips and asked Maweli. This time, I'm not going anywhere. I'll spend this vacation peacefully. Maweli smiled and replied. Really? After hearing this, the goddess's expression suddenly changed from worry to joy, and she almost pounced on him and kissed Maweli. Of course it's true. How can it be false? Maweli hugged Jennifer into his arms, enjoying the intimacy of the goddess. Jennifer gently leaned her face on Maweli's chest and suddenly thought in her heart, should their relationship go a step further? That is, give her first time to Maweli. In that regard, Jennifer is still relatively conservative. Maweli did not force it and had a completely Buddhist attitude. He was not like those disgusting playboys who were deliberately trying to play with women all day long. The 5-day Maldives vacation passed in a blink of an eye. Maweli's bank account will soon have an additional $367 million in deposits. It is now October, and there are still 2 months to welcome the new year. By then, the company's annual meeting must be held in a lively and glorious manner, with all kinds of money being spent. Otherwise, it would be a disappointment to the employees who worked hard with him. When the $367 million from the Malaysian government arrived smoothly, Maweli also traded the 12 MiG-29 fighters in his warehouse to the other party. The quality of these fighters has been tested, and Maweli's after-sales service will also be in place. So there is no need to worry about any problems. Considering life, you should mess around. This time, Maweli set his sights on the sports car industry. At this node in 2000, many famous super sports cars in later generations were still in decline and had not risen. For example, Lamborghini, Rolls-Royce, Bugatti. These car manufacturers gradually regained their glory in 2004. They designed those magnificent luxury sports cars that Maweli was familiar with. 3 days later, the butler Ivan got the news from abroad and reported it to Maweli as soon as possible. Master, I sent someone to Italy to inquire. I heard that the Lamborghini automobile company you asked about is still under the control of Chrysler in the United States. Still under Chrysler? Maweli repeated with a little hesitation after hearing it. According to the memory of the previous life, during the financial crisis in 1998, Audi, a subsidiary of Volkswagen of Germany, acquired Lamborghini's industry. Unexpectedly, Volkswagen did not take action against Lamborghini in this life. Yes, master, the current Lamborghini automobile company has been losing money for years. Chrysler wants to sell it, but can't find a suitable buyer. The butler told all the news he had inquired about. After hearing this, Maweli nodded slightly. Okay, I got it. Contact Chrysler in the United States and tell them that I have business to discuss with them. Since Volkswagen has not discovered the value of Lamborghini, it is necessary for Maweli to go to Italy to see how Lamborghini is selling. There are still several Tu-160 and Tu-22 bombers in his warehouse in Russia. At that time, let Lamborghini's sports car designers design a cool sports car according to the appearance. That will definitely create a Lamborghini whirlwind in the automotive industry. Okay, young master, I'll do it right away. Butler Ivan took the order and left. Maweli was relieved to leave the matter to him. Not long after, Ivan brought back good news to Maweli. Young master, Chrysler in the United States asked you to go to Lamborghini headquarters in Italy next Wednesday to discuss the acquisition. Do you think this time is okay? Okay, then next Wednesday will be fine. Maweli said lazily lying on the sofa. A maid beside him gently massaged him. Okay, master, I'll reply to them right away. The housekeeper immediately prepared to send someone to call Chrysler and tell them that the appointment time was no problem. But, at this moment, a piece of news that surprised Maweli so much that he sat up from the sofa suddenly reached the family. That is, Russia's top leader, the Supreme Commander of the Russian Federation Armed Forces, Putin 20th wants to summon Maweli. In 2000, the Russian president, just came to power, so there is no need to say much about the meaning of summoning Maweli at this time. He must want to get to know him and see if Maweli can be used for his own benefit. Master, the Kremlin said that they would like to invite you to visit next Wednesday. After receiving the news, the housekeeper began to stutter. The Kremlin, located in the heart of Moscow, is the symbol of the Russian Federation and the seat of the presidential palace. Chapter 132, Heading to the Kremlin. Being invited by the Kremlin is definitely the highest honor for the Mikoyan family. To exaggerate, you can die without regrets. After hearing the news, Maweli immediately sat up from the sofa. What is coming. He knew that sooner or later there would be such a day when he would be summoned by the higher-ups. But he didn't expect that this day would come so soon. Not even the year 2000 was over. Go postpone the schedule at Chrysler for a week and go to the Kremlin next Wednesday. Mawey drank a sip of red wine with a little trepidation. This is, being with the emperor is like being with a tiger. If you are not careful, it is very likely that the whole family will be destroyed. However, just as he finished a whole glass of red wine, the phone at home suddenly rang again. This time it was the head of the Mikoyan family who called. That is, the highest authority in the Mikoyan family. Master, it's Master Anatoly's call. He wants you to talk to him in person. Even Ivan, who has always been calm in doing things, was scared twice in a row today. First, the Kremlin summoned Mawey, and then the family leaders asked for a call. This was simply a matter of not coming or coming to scare people to death. Mawey, who was sitting on the sofa, reached out to take the phone. Since the death of his parents, his family's status in the Mikoyan family has plummeted. He was even almost deceived by criminals and his family property was ruined. In the end, thanks to Master Anatoly's appearance, the matter was settled. Master Anatoly, good afternoon. I'm Mawey. If you want to talk about seniority, Anatoly is Mawey's grandfather. And Mawey's father is ranked third in the family. That is Anatoly's third child. Well, hello Mawey. I received news that the Kremlin invited you to visit next Wednesday. Anatoly's voice was old and hoarse. Yes, Master Anatoly, is there anything I need to pay attention to? Mawey is no longer the original dude. The things he did were more or less seen by the family. No, just behave well. Anatoly said to Mawey simply and clearly. As the head of the family, he is not the kind of arrogant, unreasonable, selfish old guy. So after Mawey's parents died, the family property left behind was inherited by Mawey, and he did not lose a penny. Okay, Master Anatoly, I understand. Although he is not his real grandfather, Mawey still has the courtesy he should have. After all, the other party is an elder. Well, that's it for now. Remember to attend the family banquet when the time comes. Anatoly specifically instructed Mawey, and then hung up the phone. This can be regarded as concern and recognition for Mawey, but the old man is not good at expressing himself, and he kept many things in his heart. Mawey handed the phone to the butler, and then he didn't know what he was thinking, and lay back on the sofa. In this life, I'm really awesome. I was actually summoned by the president of Russia. If it were his previous life, Mawey would have been able to brag about this for the rest of his life, even to the grave. 5 days later, at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, an ordinary car made in Russia slowly drove down the streets of Moscow. This black car looked very ordinary, even a little crude, and the license plate was nothing special. But after driving around Red Square, it dared to stop directly in front of the Kremlin in the center of Moscow. The Russian guards guarding the gate were completely stunned. They wondered when such a broken car dared to drive into their presidential palace. Hello, please show me your ID. The guard stopped the car and asked for a pass. Here. The driver rolled down the window and handed over the pass. The guards looked back and forth for a long time, wondering how such a car could be qualified to enter their Russian presidential palace. Go in. The guards who could see such a gate were at least smart. They were not as stupid as in the novels, coming out to be slapped in the face. Mawey, who was sitting in the back seat of the car, was the owner of this broken car. The car his family used to buy groceries was better than the current one. The reason for doing this was to keep a low profile. The Kremlin is located on the Borovitsky Hill in the center of the Russian capital. It faces the Moscow River in the south, the Alexandrovsky Garden in the northwest, and the Red Square in the southeast, forming a triangle. When the car passed through the gate of the Kremlin, Mawey, who was sitting in the back seat of the car, saw 2 city gate towers in the distance, inlaid with ruby 5-pointed stars. This is what people call the Kremlin Red Star, the 8th wonder of the world. Within 10 minutes, the car passed several checkpoints and finally drove through the Kremlin Square and came to a beige building. This building is the official residence of the Russian president. There are many guards patrolling around it, and outsiders are not allowed to approach. The periphery of the Kremlin at that time had not yet become a tourist attraction, so it was heavily guarded. To the west of the presidential residence is an exquisite dark yellow building, which is the Russian presidential palace building, and the Russian president's office is inside. It was also the place Maweli was going to. When the black junk car stopped smoothly in front of the presidential palace building, the driver opened the door for Maweli and handed the pass to the guard at the door. Let him pass. After confirming Maweli's identity, the uniformed guard directly stepped aside to let him pass. As for the driver, who came with him, he could only stay in the car and wait for his master to come out. This was Maweli's first time in the Russian presidential palace building. He stood in front of the dark yellow building and couldn't help but take a deep breath, then passed the door inspection and entered the building. "Hello, Mr. Maweli, right? Please follow me." The office staff in the presidential palace received a notice from the guard and sent a beautiful Russian female civil servant as the reception for this time. Lead Maweli to the designated meeting room. On the way, Maweli was not very nervous. But as the meeting time got closer, he actually felt a little dry in his mouth and became uneasy. Listening to the sound of the female civil servant's high heels reminded Maweli of his first interview. "Here we are, Mr. Maweli. Please wait here for a moment." The woman led Maweli to a well-decorated meeting room. Then she poured him a glass of water and turned away. In the empty meeting room, only the air conditioner was still blowing hot air. Maweli couldn't help it and took a big sip of water to relieve his dry mouth. Time passed by minute, and about 5 minutes had passed. Maweli heard the sound of leather shoes tapping on the floor outside the meeting room. Chapter 133 Poo 20th test. Then the door of the conference room opened, and a middle-aged man in a black suit and a red tie appeared in front of Maweli. The man had sparse hair, but his eyes were sharp. Although he hadn't said a word, his aura was very strong. When he stared at me, I felt like a carnivore looking at a herbivore. It made me tense up, and even sweat in my palms. Maweli glanced at the middle-aged man, and stood up immediately. "Hello." He found that the other person was not President Putin, but someone else. "Hello, Mr. Maweli, I'm so sorry. President Putin had something to do, so he asked me to be responsible for receiving your arrival. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Pavel, and I'm the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Russian Federation." After the middle-aged man introduced himself, he politely stretched out his right hand and shook hands with Maweli. The Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Russian Federation governs the Russian Police Force and the Russian Internal Security Force. "Hello, Minister Pavel." Maweli was really disappointed that he didn't see the president in person. But he thought about it again. His performance today will definitely be heard by President 20th. So he must cheer up. "Sit down, Mr. Maweli. I often hear the president mention your name." Deputy Minister Pavel stretched out his hand and motioned Maweli to take a seat. Then he continued to say to him, "The president has always said that you are a very good talent. Today, I saw that it was true. At such a young age, you can win billions of dollars in orders for our Russian Navy and Russian Air Force. It's really amazing." When talking to official bigwigs, it is enough to believe 3 out of 10 sentences. Some people can't even believe one sentence. Maweli must understand this principle, otherwise he may be sold out without knowing it. "Thank you, Minister Pavel, for the compliment. In fact, these are just a little effort to contribute to Russia's national defense construction." Maweli regained his calm and said with a smile. He estimated that this time he came here, he must not listen to the commendation of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and there must be something waiting for him later. After a while of exchanges with Deputy Minister Pavel, seeing that the time was almost up, the other party changed the subject and asked Maweli, "Mr. Maweli, I think you must be curious about why the president suddenly summoned you here, right?" "Yes, Minister Pavel. I would like to hear the details." Maweli sat upright and moved forward, and then he talked about the theme of this summons. "In fact, there is nothing too important. You also know that in Russia, there are many financial oligarchs who have become rich overnight by embezzling privatization. Especially the top 10. They always like to stretch their hands to places where they shouldn't stretch, which makes our president very disgusted," Pavel said, deliberately looking at Maweli. Before coming, they had already investigated Maweli and knew that he was not the kind of financial oligarch who relied on sucking national property. That's why they summoned him and talked about these things. The meaning is also very obvious, that is, the Russian government wants to get rid of these blood-sucking bugs. Maweli was not in a hurry to express his position, because doing so would not gain trust. Only if you behave maturely, steadily, and take responsibility, will the other party look at you differently and entrust you with important tasks. Mr. Maweli, how do you think our Russian government should deal with these financial oligarchs who embezzle state property? Pavel saw that Maweli did not speak, so he looked into his eyes and asked word by word. Maweli, who has lived to lives, knows that this is the most critical moment of the test. If he appears to be flustered, hesitant, or unconfident, even if there is only a trace of it, then he will be officially out. In the future, he will not be able to get involved in any of Putin's staff team or think tank team. Minister Pavel, how your government should deal with these oligarchs who embezzle privatized property is your government's business. Anyway, I only know that as a Russian businessman, I will never get rich by such unscrupulous means. Maweli said it perfectly. Now he is just a businessman, and there is no reason to teach the government what to do. This is obviously a test from the other party, just to see his position. If Maweli took the initiative to pay back to the government, it would give people a sense of indecision. But if he didn't say anything, the consequences would be even more serious. Not only would his future be ruined, but he would also lose his biggest umbrella of protection. Pa. Well said, Mr. Maweli. Deputy Minister Pavel suddenly clapped his hands, obviously appreciating Maweli's answer. Maweli said nothing, but just looked at Pavel with his eyes open. He had fully invested in this play. If he smiled too quickly, it would make his answer seem a little deliberate or unreal. Dealing with these government bosses is such a tiring thing. Intrigues and scheming are just the basics. The most important thing is that these bosses are all very cunning. If Maweli had not been a human being for 2 lives and could hide himself well, he would have been seen through by others, and even his underwear would have been gone. After finishing this conversation, Maweli left the presidential palace building in a sweat. Just as he got into the car, he didn't know that on the top floor of the presidential palace, a man with equally sparse hair summoned Deputy Minister Pavel, who had just talked to him. How is it, Pavel? Do you think he is reliable? The man asked Pavel in a low voice. Mr. President, I think he should be trustworthy. Pavel replied respectfully. That's right, the man he was talking to now was the current president of Russia. He did not leave the presidential palace, but asked his confidants to test what Maweli was like, whether he was reliable. Sure enough, dealing with these government bosses is not an easy thing. Damn, if you are not careful, you will be doomed in an instant. After coming out of the presidential palace, Maweli felt that his acting skills had reached the peak of his life. At least that's the case today. He successfully passed the test of the Minister of Internal Affairs. It is estimated that the next time, it will be a preliminary cooperation. Anyway, with the Russian government as a backer, no one will dare to look at him. When Maweli got back to the mansion, the butler Ivan said to him, while holding the phone, "Master, it's Master Anatoly calling." "Oh, I see." Maweli picked up the phone and said, "Hello, Master Anatoly." Chapter 134 Lamborghini Reventon. "Well, are you back from the presidential palace?" An old and deep voice came from the other end of the microphone. "Yes, I'm back." Maweli answered neither servilely nor arrogantly. "Deputy Minister Pavel, who received you?" Anatoly asked Maweli very clearly. Obviously, he had already heard some news. "Yes, Master Anatoly." Maweli was not surprised by this. On the contrary, if the other party knew nothing, it would be weird. "Well, you did a good job this time. If you encounter any difficult problems in the future, you can come to me at any time," Anatoly said to Maweli indifferently. The meaning of the words was obviously that he was very optimistic about the child of his third son. "I know, Master Anatoly." Maweli felt that he was lucky to be reborn in such a family. If it was the kind of selfish and self-centered wealthy family that fought internally all day long, then his life would probably be difficult and someone would come out to trip him up at any time. After answering the call from his cheap grandfather, Maweli finally felt completely relieved and collapsed on the sofa. He had a lot of cold sweat today, so he needed to replenish his body. For example, eat a bear paw. Oh, no, since the family raised a polar bear, Maweli stopped eating bears. He was afraid that every time after eating, He would see Winnie's little eyes looking at him, and he would have an indescribable feeling. Ivan, Lamborghini, make an appointment with them to see when to meet. Mawei was really hardworking. He just came back from the presidential palace and was busy discussing the acquisition of Lamborghini. Sure enough, Chinese people are hardworking little bees. Even if they change their bodies, their souls can't rest. Master, Chrysler wants to ask you to meet next Tuesday at the Lamborghini headquarters in Italy if possible. After receiving the reply, the butler knocked on Mawei's door as soon as possible. Next Tuesday? I see. Go get ready. At this time, Mawei was lying on the bed watching TV. He was reborn from the future to 2000, and he was really helpless about the electronic products around him. Mobile phones, let alone touch screens. There is not even a smartphone yet. LCD TVs have just come out, but the picture quality and resolution are really hard to adapt to. If the funds on hand were not limited, Mawei really wanted to spend a lot of money to let Google quickly develop smartphones and Android systems. If you need LCD display technology, just buy Sony and Sharp LCD technology. If you need a processor, find Intel and AMD to cooperate in development. Okay, master, I'll arrange it right away. Butler Ivan is more and more respectful to Mawei. After all, Mawei is one of the few people in their Mikoyan family who has been to the presidential palace building. Even the head of the family has to call to ask about his well-being and show some concern, which shows how promising he, Master Mawei, is. Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, Italy International Airport. Mawei landed smoothly on the airport platform in his Gulfstream G200 aircraft. At the same time, outside the terminal building of the Italy airport, 5 Lamborghini Ghosts were parked neatly in the driveway, as if waiting for someone to arrive. 15 minutes later, a young Russian man in grey plain clothes, surrounded by black bodyguards, appeared in front of the terminal. Standing next to the Lamborghini Diablo, an Italian man in a suit and leather shoes came forward to greet him. Hello, are you Mr. Mawei from Russia? I'm Steven Winkman, the president of Lamborghini, and welcome to our company. The Italian man in front of him was tall, just a little shorter than Mawei. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s, with his hair combed meticulously, and he looked very stylish at first glance. Hello, Mr. Steven. Mawei signaled the bodyguards around him to make way, and then shook hands with the vice president of Lamborghini who came to pick him up. The reason why the great Lamborghini automobile company had to send 5 Diablo sports cars to welcome Mawei so grandly was because Lamborghini in this life was in a very miserable state in the hands of Chrysler. There was no research and development funds, and very few resources were allocated. There is a serious lack of funds to build a new concept sports car. The appearance of Mawei can be said to be a ray of hope for their Lamborghini. Get rid of the clutches of the old club and throw yourself into the arms of the Russian Tycoon. Although the super sports car team is grand, it is a pity that the Lamborghini Ghost, a sports car that was active in 1993, looks a bit outdated in 2000. Many passengers at the Italian airport only glanced at these 5 Lamborghinis at most after seeing them, and no one even stopped to watch. Not to mention taking out a camera to take pictures and discuss. However, at this time, 2 Ferrari 360 sports cars came out of nowhere and stopped in front of the Lamborghini team in an unusually gorgeous manner. It seems that they want to show off or compare with the appearance of the Ferrari 360 sports car. Some tourists in and out of the terminal focused their attention on these 2 cool sports cars. Obviously, it is in sharp contrast to the attitude towards Lamborghini just now. Steven Winkman, who saw this, quickly apologized to Mawei. Ahem. Mr. Mawei, I'm sorry for not being so nice. This is the best car that a Lamborghini can send. Steven felt very bitter when he explained. Ferrari Automobile Company and Lamborghini are only 100 kilometers apart, and both are Italian sports car companies. But to this day, Ferrari is still brilliant, and even has many classic models that span the ages. On the other hand, Lamborghini is really getting worse year by year and has been completely left behind by Ferrari. Just as Steven was explaining to Mawei, the doors of the 2 Ferrari 360 sports cars in front were opened. Then 2 Italian rich second generation young men, wearing ostentatious and revealing clothes, couldn't help but glance at Maweli and Steven. The chuckles in their eyes and expressions clearly expressed, what era is it now? You still drive such an outdated sports car? Do you think it's 10 years ago? However, after they finished looking at Maweli like this, the next scene made the two of them unable to laugh anymore. Just then, a super sports car made of light grey carbon fiber material appeared in front of everyone, just like an F-22 Raptor fighter jet driving on the ground. It was huge and extremely cool. This light grey super sports car was something that everyone present had never seen before. The sharp front of the car combined with the front bumper designed with two large air intakes, and the straight lines outlined many sharp angles, making the whole sports car look full of fashion and speed. The rear of the roof has layers like the flaps of a fighter jet. The LED taillights at the rear of the car, the oversized exhaust tailpipe set in the center, and the rear bumper combined with the bottom diverter seem to be telling the world how manic the energy hidden under this car shell is. The appearance of the grey carbon fiber sports car made the two Italian second generation rich people who were driving the Ferrari 360 just now stunned. They had no idea what kind of sports car it was. They only knew that their Ferrari 360 was beaten by others in terms of its coolness and shocking degree. Chapter 135 Don't test the rich's psychological price. When the carbon fiber supercar slowly stopped in front of Maweli, a Russian bodyguard in a suit came out from the scissor door. Steven, the president of Lamborghini, knew who the car belonged to. Mr. Maweli, this sports car. Even with Steven's experience, he never remembered seeing such a handsome sports car. It is no exaggeration to say that, even if the Ferrari Enzo is compared with him, the two will not be too far apart, and even to some extent, it can surpass the former. Maweli will not show off too much in front of the vice president. After all, this supercar that looks like Lamborghini Reventon is also a result of his previous life. The reason why this car was airlifted to Italy is to ask Lamborghini designers to help modify it. When the company is bought, it can be launched directly on the market. Mr. Steven, this sports car is designed based on the appearance of the F-22 fighter. The body is made of carbon fiber material. Maweli introduced it briefly. Steven, who was standing in front of him, couldn't help but brighten up. The F-22 fighter jet is made of carbon fiber? That kind of material is generally used in space rockets, right, Mr. Maweli? To be honest, this is the first time I have seen such a large-scale use in sports car bodies. Steven was very curious, looking at the grey sports car in front of him. Carbon fiber is a new type of fiber material with high strength and high modulus fiber with a carbon content of more than 95%. It is soft on the outside and strong on the inside. It is lighter than metal aluminum, but stronger than steel, and has the characteristics of corrosion resistant and high modulus. It is called the king of new materials, and is very expensive. Yes, Mr. Steven, but this car still needs some improvements. Why don't we set off now? Go to your headquarters? Maweli invited Steven to get in the sports car, and then led the team to the Lamborghini headquarters. An hour later, when Maweli drove the sports car to Sant'Agata Bolognese, Italy, he saw the old Lamborghini factory that had not yet been renovated. That appearance was very different from the new factory he saw in the pictures in the future. For a moment, Maweli couldn't believe that Lamborghini in this life was in such a bad state. Perhaps he saw the complexity hidden in Maweli's eyes, and Steven, the president sitting in the co-pilot seat, explained to Maweli awkwardly, Mr. Maweli, our Lamborghini factory has been in operation since 1963, so it looks a little old, but the equipment in the factory has been maintained all the time, and there is no problem with the performance. Lamborghini has been traded since its bankruptcy, and there is no money to renovate the old factory. In addition, it is not favored by Volkswagen in this life, so life is even more difficult. Well, I understand. Maweli nodded lightly. According to his memory of the previous life, even if Lamborghini was acquired by Volkswagen, it would not regain its glory until 2004. Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Maweli. The building in front is the Lamborghini Museum of our headquarters. Martin, the vice president of Chrysler, will be here soon, Steven said with a sigh of relief. Half a minute later, the scissor doors opened upwards, and the two walked out of the sports car one after another. Then Steven led Maweli into the Lamborghini Museum. to visit the sports cars of the era that they had created since the brand was founded. Mr. Mawey, the car you see is a Lamborghini's first sports car 350 GTV. It was officially unveiled at the Turin Motor Show in 1963. The two next to it are Lamborghini 400 GT and Lamborghini Ailro. Steven introduced the sports car to Mawey like a treasure. All of these in front of him are the glory and history of their Lamborghini. Just when Steven was halfway through the introduction, suddenly, a hearty voice came from behind the two of them. I think this must be Mr. Mawey from Russia. Hello, hello. Mawey turned around and found a fat middle-aged man in a white suit, grinning at him. Let me introduce you, Mr. Mawey. This is our Martin, Vice President of Chrysler, who is responsible for the acquisition negotiation. Steven hurriedly said to Mawey. Hello, Vice President Martin. Mawey extended his right hand and shook hands with the other party. Hello, Mr. Mawey. Did you drive the grey sports car at the door? Martin asked Mawey curiously. He originally thought that Russians were all unsophisticated people who didn't know much about cars. But Mawey's carbon fiber sports car really changed his view. Well, is there any problem? Mawey asked back. No problem. The sports car is very handsome, and it is very similar to the F-22 fighter jet newly developed by our United States. Vice President Martin said with knowledge. The two sides exchanged a few simple pleasantries in the Automobile Museum. Then Vice President Martin praised Mawey for the future of the automobile industry and the potential of Lamborghini. The purpose was to let Mawey take over Lamborghini. At least they, Chrysler, were unable to continue to support it. Mr. Mawey, I think I understand it. Why don't we talk about the acquisition? Half an hour later, Vice President Martin asked Mawey tentatively. Sure. Mawey had been waiting for the other party to say this. He was determined to acquire Lamborghini. Okay, then I'll get straight to the point, Mr. Mawey. My Chrysler company currently values Lamborghini at 150 million US dollars. If you are willing to pay this money, maybe it will belong to you. Vice President Martin said this to test Mawey's sincerity. Chrysler has not recovered from the global financial crisis in 1998, so it is in urgent need of funds as a supplement. Otherwise, not to mention Lamborghini, even his entire Chrysler group will be seriously affected. It is better to quickly sell Lamborghini, which has been losing money for years, and exchange some money to fill the local industry. 150 million US dollars? Mawey asked repeatedly. Yes, Mr. Mawey. What do you think of this price? If it exceeds psychological expectations, maybe we can then. Vice President Martin did not have time to finish his words. Mawey, who was standing in front of him, smiled and said lightly, I think this price is good. Let's go with 150 million US dollars. As soon as the light voice fell, Vice President Martin and Steven beside him were stunned for a moment, thinking they had heard it wrong. So easy to negotiate. 150 million US dollars? Without even negotiating the price? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Strategic Bomb at a Lamborghini Sports Car. Originally, Vice President Martin thought that Mawey would at least bargain for a discount or something. But he didn't expect him to be so bold. He agreed to the $150 million without even thinking about it. Is he going to the supermarket to buy vegetables? Or is he coming to Lamborghini to buy a company? Question mark. Is it so casual? Facing Mawey's wealth, Lamborghini president Steven quietly clenched his fist with excitement. Judging from the financial strength shown by the new boss, it should be much better to follow him than to be in Chrysler's hands. Especially considering Mawey's understanding of super sports cars. From his carbon fiber sports car, it can be seen that Mawey is not a rich layman. Maybe he can lead Lamborghini to revive its glory. Mr. Mawey, are you serious? Are you kidding? Vice President Martin didn't expect that he could complete the task assigned by the headquarters so easily. He still couldn't believe it. Do you think I'm kidding, Vice President Martin? Mawey asked with a smile. Bargaining is not his style, and it won't be much cheaper, at most $5 million US. It's better to buy Lamborghini quickly to avoid trouble later. After listening to Mawei's words, Chrysler Vice President Martin couldn't help but raise his thumbs and made a "you have a lot of money, you are awesome" gesture to Mawei. Others who come to negotiate with the company always ask questions and think about it and can't make up their minds. But Mawei is good. Talking about the acquisition is just like talking about anything. It seems that in his eyes, the $150 million US is just like going out for a meal, and he spends it as he pleases. 2 weeks later, the Chrysler headquarters in the United States unanimously agreed to Mawei's acquisition intention and signed a relevant contract with him to officially transfer Lamborghini to Mawei. After paying the transfer fee to Chrysler, Mawei took a plane and returned to Lamborghini headquarters to prepare for an employee meeting. Before the meeting, he specially asked Italian craftsmen to come to Russia to make models of the Tu-160 and Tu-22 supersonic bombers in the warehouse in a 1:1 scale. Then they were taken to Italy to give his new employees an unexpected surprise. The reason why the models were made was that some of the precision instruments in the fighter jets were also military secrets. If they were taken abroad casually, it would cause trouble. At 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, when Lamborghini's group of designers, engineers, and old employees were summoned by President Stephen to the company's largest warehouse, the 4 huge objects covered with black cloth in front of them successfully attracted everyone's attention. At this time, President Stephen took the microphone and introduced their new boss to everyone, saying, "Okay, everyone, please be quiet. Now I will solemnly introduce to you our new chairman of Lamborghini, Chairman Mawei. Let us give a warm applause and ask Chairman Mawei to say a few words." As the sparse applause fell, Mawei took the microphone handed by Stephen and walked to the front of the stage. From the reactions of the employees below the stage, Mawei could feel that they were not very enthusiastic in welcoming him, but this was normal. After all, the employees didn't know him well. "Everyone, I know that Lamborghini has experienced too many hardships over the years. From bankruptcy to acquisition, and then to transfer, all the enthusiasm and hope during this period have gradually been wiped out by reality. But all this is in the past. I can assure you here that the company's situation will only get better in the future, not worse." As soon as the resounding words were finished, Mawei clapped his hands and signaled the staff on the sidelines to take down the 4 epoch-making fighters covered with black cloth. As the black cloth was forcefully uncovered, the employees below the stage suddenly saw 4 avant-garde supersonic fighters suddenly appear in front of them. They are the Tu-160 strategic bomber, the Tu-22 supersonic bomber, the Tu-95 long-range bomber, and the F-22 Raptor fighter. In front of these 4 epoch-making fighters, everyone also found a light grey cool sports car, which was no less domineering, parked in the front position. This scene made the Lamborghini employees who were originally skeptical of Mawei suddenly look at the sports car and fighters with surprise and shock. "Oh my god. What's going on? Isn't this a Russian supersonic strategic bomber and an American F-22 Raptor fighter? Damn, who is this new boss? He can get a long-range strategic bomber? And he can use it in Italy? Don't you think you are focusing on the wrong thing? The problem is not those planes, which can be made with models. The key is the sports car in the front, which seems to be really good. The material seems to be quite special. Nothing can make these Lamborghini employees more excited than sports cars and fighters." Mawei saw everyone's reaction. Then he picked up the microphone and continued to say to everyone, "Okay, everyone please be quiet. The sports car in front of you is the Lamborghini Reventon that the company is about to launch. Its appearance is designed based on the F-22 Raptor fighter behind. As for the 3 bombers on the side, they will be the follow-up models of the Reventon fighter series. In addition to these, I also plan to invest in the construction of 2 automotive laboratories at the headquarters for the project research and development of new models." Mawei said to everyone inspiringly. Combined with the memory of his previous life, he only needs to use his brain a little now to turn this life upside down. As soon as the voice fell, the Lamborghini employees in the audience cheered like they had taken stimulants. If this sports car is on the market, it will definitely cause quite a stir. The new boss just said that we are going to have a new laboratory. Steven, the president, who was also standing in front of the stage, was still looking at everything in front of him in surprise, even though he had already witnessed Mawei's preparations. But the sigh in his heart just couldn't stop. The concept car of Lamborghini Reventon will be shown to the world at the Geneva Motor Show early next year. The model of the bomber will be developed by designers and engineers, and the specific time is yet to be determined. Chairman Mawei's preparations can be said to have given Lamborghini a shot in the arm. The company, which was originally half dead, has suddenly regained some vitality. I believe that when Reventon makes a sensation in the entire automotive industry at the auto show, the name of Lamborghini will return to the world stage and write its glorious history. Chapter 137, the Ukrainian-Russian joint military exercise that shocked the world. After dealing with these things in Italy, Mawei took a special plane and went directly to Ukraine. Since he spent $150 million to buy Lamborghini 2 weeks ago and also invested in 2 automobile laboratories, the original bank deposit of $472 million was reduced by $220 million to $240 million. In addition to this initial expenditure, the Lamborghini Automobile Laboratory will continue to burn money in the later period. This is not something that ordinary rich people can afford. You must have strong funds to afford it. So Mawei came to Ukraine, to be precise, the Ukrainian Navy headquarters. The reason why Mawei made a special trip to the Navy headquarters is that 3 weeks later, China will send their naval generals to visit the Ukrainian Black Sea shipyard in order to let the compatriots of the motherland appreciate a different style. Mawei had a very grand plan in mind, which was, Admiral Petrovich, I heard that China will visit Ukraine in 3 weeks. I have a plan here. I wonder if your navy is willing to support it? Mawei said directly, as soon as he entered the admiral's office. He knew Petrovich, and didn't like others, to beat around the bush with him. What's your plan, Mr. Mawei? Just tell me. Petrovich put down the documents in his hand, and looked up at Mawei. I think in order to make the reception more grand, can the Ukrainian Navy and the Russian Navy jointly hold a large-scale military exercise in the Black Sea region? This way, we can welcome guests. Secondly, we can also show the strength of the Ukrainian Navy to the world. And thirdly, we can also have actual combat exercises, which will only benefit the entire army, not harm it. Mawei spoke with emotion and reason. Hearing this, Admiral Petrovich, who was sitting in front of him, suddenly had his eyes brightened, but soon dimmed again. The 3 reasons he mentioned were all very correct. The joint military exercise would benefit the Ukrainian Navy in every way. But there is one thing that needs to be confirmed, that is, who should pay for the large-scale military exercise. The higher-ups probably won't agree to such a large-scale military exercise that costs a lot of money and labor. Mr. Mawei, your proposal is very good, and it makes me a little excited. However, the cost of this joint military exercise is probably not a small amount. Especially when participating in the military exercise with the Russian Navy, our Ukrainian Navy must show its full strength. After all, the whole world will be watching. Petrovich expressed his concerns. Such a joint military exercise between the navies of the 2 countries will not only alarm neighboring countries. At that time, the whole world will continue to pay attention. News reports will definitely be flying all over the sky, and this cannot be treated lightly. Mawei had long known the other party's concerns, so he smiled and replied, Admiral Petrovich, you don't need to worry about the cost. We have no objection to how much you are willing to pay for all personnel expenses and ammunition expenses. Anyway, leave the rest to us. As soon as the resounding voice fell, Admiral Petrovich, who was sitting in front of him, couldn't help but look at Mawei with appreciation. The meaning expressed in his eyes was that their Ukrainian Navy really did not choose Mawei as a partner. Well, Mr. Mawei, I will reflect your suggestion in its entirety. Admiral Petrovich stood up and took the initiative to extend his right hand to Mawei and shook it. Okay, then I'll trouble you, Admiral Petrovich. Mawei fully realized the benefits of having connections and money. Even if he is the richest man in the world, it is almost impossible to get the Ukrainian and Russian militaries to conduct joint military exercises. After all, dealing with the military is not just about money, but about friendship. After leaving the Ukrainian Navy headquarters, Mawei went to the Russian Navy headquarters with ease, made connections, and expressed his ideas. As a result, there was naturally not much obstruction. After all, the Russian Navy has not carried out large-scale military exercises for a long time. It is a good opportunity to publicize their national strength to the world. As for the order, Mawei mentioned it slightly, but not in depth. At best, he would say hello to the Russian Navy first. When the order comes down, how to distribute it, Mawei will definitely not offend any party. Try to tie the interests of Ukraine and Russia together. In this way, there is no need to worry about other countries sowing discord and destroying the friendship between the two brothers. After getting the unanimous agreement of the two navies, Mawei felt that he was about to reach the peak of his life. In this life, he was really awesome. He even managed to successfully coordinate the military exercises between the two countries. If possible, Mawei really wanted to be awesome and put his hands on his waist and be a little intoxicated. But after being intoxicated, he had to do everything he should do. Otherwise, the higher he climbed, the heavier he fell. With his status and position, he would be in big trouble if he made a mistake casually. Time passed quickly, and 3 weeks passed in a blink of an eye. Tomorrow, the senior naval generals from China will represent the Chinese Navy to visit the Black Sea shipyard. After the reception of China King Dao last time, Mawei, as a half-host, naturally had to reciprocate. Moreover, he had to make no less than what he had done. Only in this way can we establish good friendships among China, Russia, and Ukraine and lay the foundation for future development. At 10 o'clock the next morning, a Boeing 747 aircraft flying from China landed accurately at the Ukrainian International Airport. In order to welcome the arrival of this plane, Mawei asked the Ukrainian Navy to mobilize relations, completely block the airport, and adjust the security level to the highest level. So this time, a large number of Ukrainian police and Ukrainian army were dispatched to welcome it. In the end, there were more police and soldiers on some sections of the road than onlookers. This scene made foreign guests feel very pleasing to the eye. Even if the business was not negotiated in the end, the friendship between the two countries was well established. When the Boeing 747 aircraft landed steadily on the airport platform, the aircraft gangway fell. An old man with white hair and wrinkles on his face, wearing his naval general uniform, with dazzling golden medals hanging on his chest. Judging from the old man's rank, he must be a senior member of the Chinese Navy. He looked energetic, with powerful steps, and he didn't look old at all. One could tell at a glance that he was in good health. Good morning, Mr. Yuan came in. Welcome to Ukraine. Let me introduce you. This is Admiral Petrovich of the Ukrainian Navy. As the introducer of both parties, Mawei naturally represented the Ukrainian Navy to greet him at the airport. Chapter 138, taking the Chinese Navy on a tour of the aircraft carrier. Accompanying him was Ukrainian Admiral Petrovich, the father of Major Shekhnaya. As for Shekhnaya, who had spent a night with Mawei, for some unknown reason, she had not shown up. Since Mawei came to Ukraine yesterday, Shekhnaya seemed to be avoiding him intentionally. She neither came to the airport to greet him, nor made a phone call. The one who was responsible for welcoming him was still another major. After Mawei finished speaking, the male translator who was responsible for translating for both parties clearly conveyed the meaning of the words to Mr. Yuan came in. The old man nodded after listening, and then he stretched out his right hand and shook hands with Admiral Petrovich and Mawei respectively. Hello, Admiral Petrovich. Hello, Mawei. From the brief contact, Mawei could feel that the other party was the kind of person who was serious and introverted. This was very similar to Admiral Petrovich next to him. They were both pragmatic. They didn't fall for sweet talk. So fortunately, Mawei prepared a small surprise for the old man in advance, which is, I'm sorry, Mr. Yuan came in. Before this, I took the initiative to replace the vehicle originally intended for pickup with this Dongfeng CA-71, which is China's first independently developed model. Mawei said, and exchanged glances with the officer beside him. Then half a minute later, a fiery red Dongfeng CA-71, with its silver dragon logo hanging on the front of the car and the word Dongfeng in a flamboyant style, appeared in front of Mr. Yuan came in with full of emotion. This Dongfeng CA-71 was produced by the first automobile manufacturing plant in 1958. It has unparalleled symbolic significance and commemorative value. Only more than 30 vehicles were produced at the beginning, and each car was precious. Many people who wanted to collect it did not have this opportunity. When Mr. Yuan came and saw this old car in his memory, he suddenly recalled his feelings when he first saw the Dongfeng CA-71 when he was young. At that time, he was only 28 years old and in his prime. And all the people who could ride in the Dongfeng CA-71 were all famous figures at that time. Fresh memories came like the sea, which made Mr. Yuan Kamen's face look a little dazed. He turned to look at Ma Wenyi and then asked him in a deep voice, "Where did you get this car from?" "I bought it from an old antique collector." Ma Wenyi also spent a lot of connections to find this antique car. After hearing the answer, Mr. Yuan Kamen slowly walked towards the red Dongfeng CA-71 in front of him. A large group of Chinese naval officers followed him silently without any interruption. Yuan Kamen reached out and gently stroked the hood of the Dongfeng car. The complex emotions revealed in his eyes were obviously immersed in the memories of his youth. At that time, he was very successful and soon he also owned a Dongfeng car, but it was not a CA-71 model. After being silent for a long time, Mr. Yuan Kamen walked up to Ma Wenyi again and said to him, "Thank you, Ma Wenyi, thank you for doing this." Yuan Kamen thanked Ma Wenyi solemnly. "You're welcome, Mr. Yuan Kamen. These are what we should do." For a naval veteran like this, patriotism and feelings are the most important things in his heart. Ma Wenyi knew that it was useless to talk nonsense when dealing with such a big man. Grasping the above 2 points was the key to success. With the pickup of this Dongfeng CA-71, Mr. Yuan Kamen's expression became relaxed along the way. At least he was no longer as serious and tense as when he just got off the plane. Ma Wenyi sat in the Dongfeng warrior car and looked at the scenery on both sides of the road. There was no other vehicle on the road except their convoy. The entire road was blocked by the police, and the military vehicles led the way, which was the highest level of treatment. When the Dongfeng convoy drove to the urban section, the entire road was blocked by Ukrainian police. At the crossroads, no matter whether it was a red light or a green light, it was unimpeded. The people on both sides of the road and the Ukrainian vehicles blocked at the intersection had no idea. They didn't even dare to honk their horns to complain. After all, this scale of travel is impossible without a certain level. It is precisely because of such privileged treatment that the Dongfeng convoy quickly drove to the Black Sea shipyard. Just like the last time Ma Wenyi came, the appearance of the Black Sea shipyard has not changed much. The only change is the Varyak aircraft carrier that Shiknihai took him to see. The aircraft carrier has now been sent by Ma Wenyi to polish and renovate the rust and corrosion marks on the surface of the hull. It is impossible to tell that it is already a middle-aged aircraft carrier with a service life of more than 10 years. Mr. Yuan Kamen, the aircraft carrier in front of you is the Varyak aircraft carrier from our Black Sea shipyard. The hull is 67% complete and all parts are well preserved. When Ma Wenyi led Yuan Kamen and a group of Chinese naval officers to the top of the aircraft carrier dry dock, he didn't need to say anything else. The shocking sight of the aircraft carrier in front of him was enough to make people speechless. The Varyak aircraft carrier is a Kuznetsov class aircraft carrier with a full load displacement of 67,000 tons and a total length of 306 meters. The height of the bow flight deck is 7 stories above the water surface, and the width of the stern flight deck is 73 meters. The aircraft carrier can accommodate up to about 60 fighters, and there are 12 SSN-19 anti-ship missile launchers in the front of the flight deck. Aircraft carriers are a symbol of a country's national strength. It is not only extremely aggressive, but also has a very strong deterrent power in guarding the country's territorial waters and confronting neighboring navies. If you decide, buy this aircraft carrier back, then for the whole country, there will be a festive atmosphere like the new year. After all, the aircraft carrier has been built from scratch. This is a very big breakthrough, which can definitely boost the morale of the army and the people. Looking at the huge monster in front of him, Mr. Yuan came in and a group of Chinese naval generals behind him were so heavy that they could not speak. Strengthening the navy has always been the lifelong wish of their generation. And the aircraft carrier battle group is almost the overlord of the entire ocean. The significance of owning it means that other countries dare not despise it. For example, Japanese ships, such as Korean ships, absolutely dare not clamor and act presumptuously in front of the aircraft carrier battle group. Seeing that the naval generals were speechless for a while, Mawei, as half a host, naturally had to do his best to be a good host. Mr. Yuan came in. The Variag aircraft carrier in front of you is expected to be officially put into service in the next 2 to 3 years, if it is put back into production. In other words, by the end of 2003 at the latest. Chapter 139, destroyers lead the way, stunning the Chinese Navy. If Mawei remembered correctly, the Liaoning aircraft carrier was completed in 2011 and put into service on September 25, 2012. The reason why it took so long was that the Chuanglu Group spent $20 million to buy this semi-finished aircraft carrier from the Ukrainian Navy. It was planned to tow it back and have it completed by the Dalian shipyard. However, considering the shipbuilding technology and other issues, the aircraft carrier that the Black Sea shipyard could complete in 3 years would be more time consuming and laborious. When it came to the Dalian shipyard, there is time to learn, and after learning, there is still time to explore on your own. Lay the foundation for the future independent research and development of aircraft carriers. Can it be completed within 3 years? Mr. Yuan came and asked, following Mawei's words. I have to say that this time is very tempting. Yes, Mr. Yuan came in. Mawei nodded lightly. This time he received the Chinese Navy, not for business purposes. Just take them on a tour and introduce them to the Variag aircraft carrier in the shipyard. There are also the 2 modern class 956 type destroyers parked at the shipyard dock at this time. These 2 large destroyers were also specially prepared by Mawei to receive the Chinese Navy. In addition to aircraft carriers, destroyers are also an important part of demonstrating national strength and guarding national territorial waters. In the naval fleet, destroyers have always been medium-sized warships with relatively strong assault power. It is equipped with a variety of weapons such as air defense, anti-submarine, and anti-sea, and can not only perform offensive assault tasks in the naval fleet, it can also undertake tasks such as air defense and anti-submarine escort for combat formations. It can be said to be an all-round ship. Mr. Yuan came in. Have you ever learned about our Russian and Ukrainian Type 956 modern class missile destroyers? If you are interested in this, maybe I can take you on board to appreciate its grace. Mawei smiled and asked the Chinese naval officers around him. For the visit of his compatriots in the motherland, he naturally wants to do his best. By the way, give compatriots certain support and assistance within the scope of his ability. I believe that what will be returned in return will definitely be a spring of gratitude. Type 956 destroyer? After hearing Mawei's invitation, Mr. Yuan came in repeated with his eyes brightened. Although the Variag aircraft carrier is shocking, it is at best an aircraft carrier that cannot be put into service. You can only watch it, but you can't personally appreciate its strength. On the contrary, the Type 956 modern class missile destroyer is completely different. This is a Soviet warship in service, with very powerful firepower and breakthrough power. As a naval soldier, there is no reason to refuse such a tempting invitation. Mr. Mawei, it is our honor to be able to appreciate the Type 956 missile destroyer. At this time, Mr. Yuan came in. The senior naval general beside him nodded to Mawei and said, since the officers arrived at the Ukrainian airport, they have had a very good impression of Mawei. I always feel that he, a Russian, understands Chinese culture very well and respects China very much. From the way he treats people to his gestures, you can see that Mawei is very cultured. Now at the Black Sea shipyard, Mawei is taking them to visit the aircraft carrier and preparing for the missile destroyer to board the ship. It was really painstaking and left a strong impression on people. They will always remember this impression in their hearts. If Mawei needs help one day in the future, they will definitely do their best to help him solve the problem within their ability. 10 minutes later, when Maweli brought everyone to the Black Sea shipyard dock, two magnificent 956 type modern class missile destroyers appeared in front of everyone with great dominance. The 956 type large destroyer has a full load displacement of 8,000 tons and a rough and majestic hull design. It can be called the strongest anti-ship and air defense capability among the Soviet Navy destroyers in the 1980s. Whether it is overall size, seaworthiness, survivability, firepower, etc., it exceeds the previously built 1134 type cruiser. Mr. Yuan, let me first introduce these two Type 956 missile destroyers. Arranged on both sides of their forecastle are two sets of quadruple SSN-22 Rigio anti-ship missile launchers. There is a double-barreled 130mm naval gun at the A and Y gun positions. The B and X gun positions are each equipped with a SAN-7 Hurricane single-arm anti-aircraft missile launcher. Maweli introduced them to Yuan and the naval generals like a treasure. According to the memory of the previous life, Russia has nearly $2.5 billion in destroyer orders, all of which come from domestic sources. So this time, if the Black Sea shipyard receives a super order, it will inevitably allocate a part of it to the Russian Navy shipyard. This was discussed by Maweli in advance, and both parties tacitly agreed. After all, only by closely binding the interests of Ukraine and Russia together. In this way, the two brothers will not be easily provoked by other countries. The Chinese naval officers, while listening to Maweli's introduction, looked at the two modern class destroyers in front of them and deeply felt the strong military power of the former Soviet Union. It was simply awe-inspiring and enviable. If their navy could be equipped with destroyers of this level, then its strength would increase a lot. I believe that by then, the group of naval soldiers in the fleet will be very excited. However, what they don't know is that the two Type 956 destroyers in front of them are only a small part of this welcome. When the ships enter the Black Sea, the scale and formation that will appear at that time will surely shock everyone deeply. Maweli, why did the Ukrainian Navy specially prepare two Type 956 destroyers? It's enough for us to take one, right? Mr. Yuan asked Maweli, catching the key point. Maweli smiled after hearing this. Jiang is indeed old and spicy, so he explained to everyone. Mr. Yuan it is like this. In order to welcome everyone's arrival, the Ukrainian Navy, together with our Russian Navy, is preparing to hold a large-scale joint military exercise in the Black Sea region. In order to let everyone watch this exercise better, we will be divided into two groups and go to sea on two Type 956 destroyers. As soon as Maweli's voice fell, the naval officers standing in front of him were stunned and looked at each other. From the expressions of the crowd, it can be seen that they did not expect that they would see the joint military exercise of the Ukrainian and Russian navies during this visit. This level of welcome ceremony is really surprising. If the news is passed back to China, it will definitely make the Chinese people feel extremely proud. At the same time, the friendship between Ukraine, Russia, and China will be even stronger. After all, Maweli said that this exercise was specially held to welcome their arrival. This scale of welcome is really super awesome. Chapter 140, the much anticipated Ukrainian-Russian joint military exercise. Mr. Maweli, thank you so much for your hospitality, the Ukrainian military, and the Russian military. Thank you very much. Mr. Yuan the naval officer beside him, stretched out his hands and shook Maweli and said, "You're welcome. We are also doing our best as hosts." Maweli replied modestly. What he did was really amazing. Sometimes, even Maweli himself felt like he was dreaming. He didn't know how he did it. Okay, everyone, the joint military exercise is about to begin, and it's time for us to board the ship. Maweli smiled and said to the naval generals in front of him. He was also looking forward to the shocking scene later. After all, this was his first experience. 20 minutes later, when everyone was divided into two groups, they successfully boarded the Type 956 destroyer. Then the destroyer started slowly and took the Chinese Navy to the Black Sea. Two modern class destroyers with a displacement of 8,000 tons drove side by side on the sea. The magnificent waves constantly hit the front of the ship, and white waves appeared. Mawei, Mr. Yuan came in, and others stood in the captain's room of the destroyer, watching the huge monster under them galloping on the sea. There was an indescribable sense of grandeur in that feeling. Compared with sports cars and armored vehicles, large machines such as warships can better satisfy men's desire to conquer. When the two 956 type modern class destroyers were driving on the sea for about 25 minutes, Mawei saw several Grisha class frigates suddenly appear in the sea areas on the left and right, and they were heading towards them at full speed. Report to the captain, the Black Sea Fleet has assembled, and now we are heading towards the designated location at a speed of 27 knots per hour. The first mate in the captain's room reported to the captain of this ship. Okay, pass the order down, maintain this speed, and keep moving forward. After the captain gave the order, he couldn't help but glance at Mawei standing next to him. Before coming, he had learned that this joint military exercise with the Russian Navy was all thanks to Mawei's generous donation. So much so that, even though this was the first time he met Mawei today, this naval colonel paid special attention to him. When the entire fleet continued to sail on the sea for about half an hour. At this time, the captain suddenly picked up the telescope and carefully observed the sea ahead. Mr. Mawei, your country's navy is in the left front position, and now we are about to send an invitation to the other side to meet. The captain said, and handed the telescope in his hand to Mawei. After Mawei nodded and took the telescope, he did not look at it himself first. Instead, he handed the telescope to Mr. Yuan came in next to him. Mr. Yuan came in. Our Russian naval fleet is about to meet with the Ukrainian navy. They are in front of us on the left. As the saying goes, there is order in the order of seniority, especially when dealing with military leaders. A detail, a small mistake, can ruin a person's future. Compared with looking first and then looking through the telescope, Mawei felt that there was no disadvantage, and it would be the same if he looked later, and he would not lose a piece of meat. Seeing the telescope handed over by Mawei, Mr. Yuan came and looked at him with appreciation. From the Dongfeng Sedan at the beginning, to the Variag aircraft carrier just now, and now the joint military exercise between Ukraine and Russia. He saw all of Mawei's performances and kept them in mind. To be honest, the Russian youth in front of him is really good. He should be well mannered and restrained, and he is mature and steady in doing things, bold and careful. He is really a rare talent. Thank you, Mawei. Thank you for what you have done. Mr. Yuan came in solemnly expressed his gratitude to Mawei. He completely accepted this kindness. You're welcome, Mr. Yuan came in. Mawei said, taking the telescope handed by the old man, and then saw the sea area in front of the left. The Russian Navy also sent two modern class destroyers, plus several Grisha class frigates, to form a massive military exercise fleet. Half an hour later, the Russian Navy fleet officially met with the Ukrainian fleet where Mawei was. Four 8,000-ton displacement 956 type modern class frigates drove side by side in the open sea. The waves they created on the sea surface made the photographers who were taking helicopters to shoot this scene press the shutter frantically. Record this historic moment. The dozens of frigates following around covered the entire Black Sea with the military deterrence of Ukraine and Russia. The picture was particularly shocking. Generally, naval exercises are nothing more than a group of ships patrolling in a designated area. Then two shots were fired at the sea level to squander the expiring shells and missiles in the inventory. Even if the military exercise was completed. But in order to make this joint military exercise more shocking, Mawei specially transferred 4 newly painted heir class frigates from his North Sea shipyard. These 4 frigates have all been retired. The reason for their existence is to let the gunfire of the Ukrainian and Russian navies ruthlessly destroy them. By the way, publicize the military strength of the two countries to the world. When the fleets of the two countries ordered to slow down and drove to a position 1.5 kilometers away from the Heian class frigate, the captain couldn't help but glance at Mawei and Mr. Yuan came in, meaning that the climax of this military exercise was about to begin. Seeing this, Mawei nodded slightly to show that he knew. Then he said to the Chinese naval generals beside him, Mr. Yuan came in. The main gun of our 956 type destroyer will fire at the 4 Heian class frigates in front. The caliber of the main gun is 130 mm. It is the largest twin-mounted 70 caliber naval gun in the world except for the Iowa class battleship cannon. It is controlled by the MR-184 fire control radar and can be directly remotely controlled outside the battle room. It can also choose to use the optoelectronic aiming device on the upper right side of the turret for fire control. Mawei introduced it to the naval officers as a host. Hearing this, Mr. Yuan came in and the generals behind him couldn't help but nod repeatedly. Mr. Mawei, we in China have heard about the main guns of your fleet's Type 956 destroyers, but we have never had the opportunity to see them with our own eyes, a naval officer said to Mawei with a little excitement. From the look in his eyes, it can be seen that everyone is looking forward to the upcoming artillery drill. After all, this is something you can't see at other times. It can also help us understand the power of the Sovereign E-class destroyers of Ukraine and Russia. Just as the Chinese naval officer finished talking to Mawei excitedly, at this time, the Ukrainian captain, who was holding the ship's intercom, received instructions from his superiors and gave orders to the crew of his ship. Now listen to my orders. Prepare the main guns at the bow. Direction. Distance. Chapter 141 Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruiser. Now listen to my command. Prepare the main battleship guns at the bow. Position. Distance. Countdown 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire. As the captain's voice faded, the 130mm main battleship gun installed at the bow suddenly adjusted its muzzle direction and height. Then there was a loud bang. The main battleship gun suddenly retracted backwards. At the same time, 2 huge shells were madly fired out of the muzzle at a speed that could not be seen by the naked eye. The amazing recoil made everyone in the captain's room clearly feel that the entire destroyer was shaken. The 2 shells fired left the gun smoke far behind. They drew 2 beautiful trajectories in the air, and then with a whistling sound that broke through the air, they ruthlessly attacked the 4 heir-class frigates in front. Boom. Boom. Almost at the same time, 2 shells accurately hit the hull of a frigate. The powerful explosion instantly penetrated the steel plate on the left deck of the frigate. Thick black smoke immediately drifted out from the hull. It showed everyone that the 2 shots hit perfectly. Seeing that the first shot of the ship did not miss, the Ukrainian Navy and the captain's room burst into cheers. In a joint military exercise of this scale, it would be very embarrassing if the enemy ship could not be hit. Moreover, the other party was still standing there, waiting for them to hit. If this was a mistake, it would be embarrassing to the international community. Well done. The captain praised the soldiers who controlled the main naval guns on the intercom. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 modern-class destroyers around him also adjusted their guns and launched a fierce artillery attack on the heir-class frigate in front. Bang, 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 bang. Mawei, standing in the captain's room, looked out the window at the continuous firepower attack and the 130mm caliber shells that kept flying. Some of them hit the ships, causing great damage to the frigates. Some fell on the sea, stirring up huge waves. The fish within the range of the shells were directly blown upside down. Although Mawei couldn't see this scene, as a person who had experienced it, he could imagine it. After a round of naval gunfire, the deck of the destroyer was filled with smoke. The 4 heir-class frigates 1 kilometer away were destroyed beyond recognition by the shells. Only the last breath was left to send them to the bottom of the sea. Mr. Yuan came in and a group of naval generals looked at the scene in front of them with a little shock. Sure enough, the modern class destroyers of Ukraine and Russia have fierce firepower. This shell exploded. Even if it didn't hit the hull, the waves that exploded were also extremely spectacular. Mr. Yuan came in. How do you feel about the main naval gun attack on our destroyer just now? Mawei asked the Chinese Navy with a smile. Very good. Mr. Yuan came in said only these 4 words. The meaning is very obvious, that is, he is very satisfied with this Type 956 destroyer. Thank you, compliment. In addition to the 2 main guns at the bow and stern, our modern class destroyers are also equipped with 2 sets of anti-submarine and anti-ship dual-purpose torpedo tubes with a caliber of 533mm. In close-range sea combat, it can effectively penetrate enemy submarines or ships. Anti-submarine and anti-ship dual-purpose torpedoes are standard configurations of Soviet destroyers. Although in modern warfare, they are gradually replaced by other weapons, such as anti-ship missiles and long-range precision strikes. But this big killer still has a very important position in the hearts of old soldiers like you and Kamen. 533 caliber dual purpose torpedo? Mr. Yuan Kamen asked Maweli with great interest. 533mm caliber torpedoes can already be regarded as heavy torpedoes. Compared with 324mm and 400mm torpedoes, they are much more powerful. As long as they hit, they can easily sink a 10,000-ton destroyer. A 6,000-ton ship in front of this torpedo is like paper and can be blown into two pieces in an instant. During World War II, the US Yorktown aircraft carrier and the Japanese battleship Yamato were both sunk by torpedoes. This thing either misses, or once it hits, it is a devastating blow to all ships and submarines in the sea. Yes, a 533 caliber heavy torpedo. Maweli answered truthfully. To be honest, he has never seen what a torpedo launch looks like. He has seen it in movies before, but those are all special effects, and the real picture needs to be considered. I remember that in the previous life, Russia also developed a 1550mm giant nuclear torpedo with a range of up to 10,000 kilometers. One shot can directly destroy the entire New York and cause a huge tsunami. However, just as Maweli was answering this, a 1144 type Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruiser, guided by two tugboats, slowly passed the fleet where Maweli and his team were. The Kirov-class cruiser, with a full load displacement of more than 25,000 tons, is the largest cruiser in the world, and it is also nuclear-powered. The ship can carry more than 400 missiles, and has more than 200 missile launch ports. So it has the title of arsenal ship, and is a very terrifying surface monster. When Mr. Yuan came in and the naval officers behind him saw the sea monster, which was 3 times larger than the Type 956 destroyer, slowly dragged to the front of the fleet, the expression on Mr. Yuan Kamen's face was moved for the first time. That ship, is it a Kirov-class, nuclear-powered missile cruiser? Are you going to use heavy torpedoes to sink it? Mr. Yuan Kamen asked Maweli with surprise. Even the old man was shocked, not to mention the group of naval officers standing behind him. At this moment, they couldn't help but look shocked and whispered to each other. The Russian Navy and the Ukrainian Navy are going to sink that nuclear-powered cruiser? This military exercise is too fierce. This seems to be the first time I've heard of a country bombing a nuclear-powered cruiser during a naval exercise. I'm afraid even the Americans don't dare to do this. Maweli listened to the discussion of the crowd, and then replied to the naval officers, yes, Mr. Yuan Kamen, the ship in front of you is a retired Kirov-class nuclear-powered missile cruiser. It is also the last link of this joint military exercise. Rather than saying it was retired, it is better to say that the nuclear reactor exploded. There was no money to repair it, and it was parked in the port waiting to die for many years. This is the real reason for the retirement of the nuclear-powered cruiser in front. Of course, before it was towed here, the nuclear reactor in the hull had long been dismantled, so there is no need to worry about nuclear explosions, nuclear radiation and other hazards. After listening to what Maweli said, Mr. Yuan Kamen standing in front of him, as well as the naval officers, were speechless for a long time. Chapter 142 The Joint Military Exercise that shocked the world. In a military exercise, 4 Heian-class frigates and a 25,000-ton Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruiser were blown up one after another. How terrifying is the military strength of Ukraine and Russia? Even people who are not from their countries feel distressed for this. With the departure of the 2 tugboats, only the huge nuclear-powered cruiser and the wreckage of 4 frigates were left on the sea. At this time, the captain turned his head and looked at Maweli and then said to him, Mr. Maweli, the 533 caliber torpedo is ready and can be launched at any time. Maweli nodded after hearing this and then said lightly, it's getting late, so let's do it now. As soon as the voice fell, the captain picked up the walkie-talkie in his hand and gave orders to the crew of the ship. All units, get ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Torpedo launch. When the captain counted down to 1, a heavy torpedo more than half a meter wide and more than 7 meters long suddenly sprang out of the torpedo tube on the destroyer. The torpedo glided in the air in a short arc and then plunged into the sea, and it attacked the nuclear-powered cruiser in the distance at a very fast speed. About 20 seconds later, the originally quiet and peaceful sea surface suddenly startled a huge wave. Then, the wave intensified. It was as if there was an underwater volcano erupting under the ship. The entire sea surface was instantly blown up. The turbulent sea water, with white waves, was blasted straight into the sky by the terrifying impact and water pressure energy generated by the torpedo explosion. Almost in an instant, the explosion shook the entire nuclear-powered cruiser violently. The bulky hull was obviously lifted up by the power of the shockwave. It was as if there was a deep-sea beast pulling the cruiser on the seabed. The explosion of a heavy torpedo was not like a missile, full of flames and black smoke. It was detonated at the bottom of the ship, and the power was reacted by the seawater, which would hit the ship itself to a greater extent. Therefore, the damage caused was more serious. After 5 seconds, the huge roar of the explosion was transmitted to the captain's room, where Maweli was. The magnificent sea shock wave spread from the explosion point at a speed visible to the naked eye. The picture combined with the explosion just now was simply a thrilling art. People couldn't help but feel awe. The whole person's posture was unconsciously lowered to the lowest. This is really shocking. The Chinese naval officers who witnessed the whole process were surprised at this time. Looking at everything in front of them, the dignified 25,000-ton nuclear-powered cruiser was blown beyond recognition by a 533mm caliber torpedo. This power is really terrifying. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, everyone would not know that the Soviet torpedo was so powerful. After the end of this joint military exercise that shocked the world, as usual, Maweli dispatched 3 to 5 fishing boats to salvage the fish that were killed or stunned in the Black Sea. As for the wreckage and debris of ships, a professional team was responsible for the aftermath. The 2 photographers on the helicopter recorded the entire joint military exercise with a high-definition camera. When the negatives are developed and made into photos, they will hand them over to their superiors as soon as possible to see which photos can be selected and published in newspapers in Ukraine and Russia. Even authorized foreign media to report on it. The next morning, newspapers printed with the joint military exercise of the Ukrainian and Russian navies appeared in the streets of Russia and Ukraine. On the second and third days, not only Ukraine and Russia, but also some newspapers in China and the United States published the news at the fastest speed. Xinmin Evening News, Ukraine and Russia held a joint military exercise in the Black Sea region the day before yesterday. It is said that this military exercise was to welcome the visit of our navy. People's Daily, just the day before yesterday, Ukraine and Russia held a joint military exercise in the Black Sea region, dispatching 4 modern-class destroyers and 12 Grisha-class frigates. The scene was spectacular. In addition to these newspapers, which everyone had a copy of, photos of the joint military exercise were also selected and posted online. They were soon spread to major forums and websites. Netizens at home and abroad were shocked. I was shocked in front of the computer screen at that time. Fuck. Are the Russian and Ukrainian navies so awesome? Military exercises actually blew up 4 Heir-class frigates, a Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruiser. Which country is as awesome as them? A netizen from China posted in the forum with his eyes almost falling out. Oh my god. What did I see? Russia's heavy torpedoes are so powerful. A 26,000-ton cruiser was sunk by a single torpedo. It's really terrifying. The person who posted the message was an American netizen. There are many netizens who are as shocked as him. In their lives, they have never seen a military exercise in any country that is so fierce. Looking at these comments from netizens online, Maweli, who has hidden his merits and fame, feels that this feeling is not bad. He is the behind-the-scenes promoter of this joint military exercise. Only the bigwigs of the Ukrainian and Russian military know that this is thanks to him. As for the Chinese Navy, which returned with excitement, they reported to the motherland the scenes they saw in the Black Sea. Among them, of course, the Varyak aircraft carrier that has been completed 67% in the Black Sea shipyard, and the 956 type modern class destroyer they are on. Maweli will definitely help to get the biggest discount for these 2 types of ships. If possible, he even wanted to pass on the relevant technologies of aircraft carriers and modern class destroyers to the allies, who were in urgent need of them in a very secret and appropriate way. After all, at that time, the domestic navy needed the technology of Ukraine and Russia. If Mawei could help, then in the future, the two powers would definitely join forces to form an alliance. At that time, Japan and South Korea would not dare to make a sound in front of this alliance. Of course, these are things that need to be developed slowly in the future. It is impossible to achieve it overnight. And it must be done safely and secretly, so that the intelligence element, agents, and spies of other countries cannot find it. In this way, once the alliance is reached, I'm afraid that the United States will not dare to provoke it casually. The United States in this life is still quite friendly to the whole world and has not yet become the world police. After reading these news and comments on the internet, Mawei is about to usher in his birthday as a Russian. That is, the birthday of Russian Mawei. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Birthday Fireworks and Dedication. This birthday cake made of flowers was laid horizontally in the middle of the hall. On it were pink flowers and the words "Happy Birthday, Mawei" were written. The tourists entering and leaving the hotel were amazed. Many people couldn't help but take out their cameras to take pictures of this romantic scene. How is it? Do you like it? This is the first time you have received a flower cake, right? The goddess asked Mawei with great pride. She had designed this gift in front of her for a long time. At this moment, Mawei suddenly felt that he was being teased. Generally speaking, sending flowers and preparing birthday gifts should be done by men for women. Why is it the other way around when it comes to him today? Mawei has always been the only one who pretends to be cool in front of others, but he didn't expect that one day he would let his girlfriend show off. Ahem. So, another first time of mine is gone just like that. This was the first time in Mawei's life that he received flowers and a cake made of flowers. It's gone if it's gone. Don't you want it to be? The goddess turned her head and looked at Mawei and asked. Before Mawei could answer, Jennifer smiled and pulled his arm, trotting to the flowers and cake, and asked the hotel staff to take a photo of her and Mawei. Facing the offensive launched by the goddess, Mawei felt that this birthday was quite special, a feeling he had never experienced before. So he cooperated and took a photo with Jennifer. Then, at the urging of the goddess, he went up to the top floor restaurant of the hotel to enjoy a romantic candlelight dinner. The seafood restaurant on the top floor had been booked by Jennifer a long time ago. Since the whole hotel was owned by her father, there was no minimum consumption at all. Even if the two of them didn't spend any money, the restaurant didn't dare to do anything to them. On the contrary, they would do their best to serve them, for fear of displeasing the rich lady and her rich husband. Mawei and Jennifer had just sat in the restaurant's view seat. He saw the goddess take off her pink woolen coat elegantly, revealing the black dress and black stockings she was wearing inside. Jennifer's exquisite and beautiful face was reflected on the floor-to-ceiling glass window. The background behind the two people is a brilliant night view of Washington, giving people an indescribable visual enjoyment. The dinner of the two people is naturally high-end seafood and high-end cuisine. For example, lobsters just flown in from Australia, scallops, foie gras, caviar from France, all kinds of delicacies are available, and it is luxurious and enjoyable to eat. Even the customized birthday cake was carefully made by a famous pastry chef. After eating a romantic candlelight dinner, Jennifer was not in a hurry to take Mawei away. Instead, she looked out the window, as if waiting for something. Mawei could feel that the goddess had put a lot of effort into his birthday, which was not his birthday this time. What are you looking at? Will there be fireworks later? Mawei drank a sip of red wine and then asked Jennifer casually. However, it would have been better if he hadn't asked. Once he asked, Jennifer, who was full of expectations, was like a little female cat whose tail was stepped on. She was not feeling well. How did you know? Oh my god. The goddess looked at Mawei with surprise. There was a sense of frustration that a secret had been discovered. I don't know. I just said that casually. Watching fireworks on a birthday is also good. Mawei explained more and more obscurely. Sure enough, sometimes being too smart is not good. Many surprises can be guessed in advance, which makes it meaningless. However, just as he was talking, a string of light spots with red sparks suddenly rose outside the floor-to-ceiling glass window of the restaurant. Then there was a light bang, and the light spots bloomed in the sky, turned into a dazzling and bright giant purple firework, reflecting the figures of Maweli and Jennifer. The blooming distance of the purple fireworks was very close to the two of them, as if they could reach out and touch it. Very dazzling and beautiful. Even if someone in the restaurant guessed the follow-up, he was still fascinated by the beauty after seeing the fireworks blooming up close with his own eyes. The purple buds flashed in the night sky. Next appeared pink heart-shaped fireworks, red and blue double fireworks. Seeing someone was so dazzling that he didn't even have time to blink. After seeing such a gorgeous fireworks display, the passers-by and tourists downstairs of the Marriott Hotel stopped and pointed at the sky, talking about it. Wow. These fireworks are so beautiful. Who set them off? They look very expensive. These should be high-end fireworks, right? The kind that costs thousands of dollars a minute. Rich people. About 5 minutes later, this gorgeous fireworks gradually came to an end. Finally, dozens of red sparks were ignited in the air, and then the fireworks bloomed, forming a dazzling string of English words happy birthday. Maweli imprinted these beautiful pictures in his mind. Recalling his orphan life in his previous life, Maweli suddenly found that he seemed to have never celebrated his birthday seriously. He always did it hastily, and even forgot the time. When the English words in the night sky gradually dissipated, Goddess Jennifer said to Maweli reluctantly, "It's over fireworks, they are set off so fast." Maweli looked at Jennifer without saying a word. He was afraid that saying words like thank you would make him feel awkward. As for the mushy words, he couldn't say them. So he could only sit in front of the window, hesitant to speak, and the picture in his mind was all the gorgeous fireworks just now. Why is there no sound? Did the fireworks flash in my eyes? The goddess tilted her head and looked at Maweli. At the same time, she stretched out her bare hand and waved it in front of him. No, Maweli said, and directly grabbed Jennifer's waving bare hand. Then, before he could use force, the goddess stood up naturally and said to him, "Then you are not drunk, right? Let's go to the room and rest for a while." When Jennifer said this, her face couldn't help but heat up slightly. Before in the Maldives, she had been thinking about when to take a step further with Maweli. However, after thinking about it, she decided that it would be better to give herself completely to someone on his birthday as the best birthday gift. When Maweli came to the presidential suite of the Marriott Hotel with Jennifer's hand, Goddess Jennifer took off her woolen coat. Then she took out a black silk scarf from the drawer in the room. "There is one last birthday gift for you. Blindfold your eyes first," Jennifer said, and she put her hands around and blindfolded Maweli, who was sitting on the bed. During the whole process, Maweli found that the goddess' hands were trembling slightly, probably because of nervousness. Chapter 144, Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft. Until the black cloth covered his eyes and his vision was shrouded in a hazy state, the tension seemed to ease. After a night, Maweli and Jennifer fell asleep together. After taking a shower, they slept soundly and woke up from their sweet dreams at noon the next day. After 2 romantic nights in Washington, Maweli went to Blizzard again and planned to ask them to develop new games. A game company needs to constantly innovate in order to not be forgotten by players and become the first in the industry. With the global popularity of Counter-Strike, the outside world's valuation of Blizzard games has also risen all the way. Soon, from the original $12 million that Maweli acquired, it rose to $236 million. It has increased by nearly 20 times. Seeing this, many peers were jealous and envious. Especially the French Vivendi who transferred him at the beginning. Now their intestines are green with regret. "Chairman Maweli, you are here." Maweli's motorcade just arrived downstairs of Blizzard. Blizzard President Mike Mikoyan, along with his subordinates, personally went downstairs to greet them. "Well, I have 2 things to do. One is the development of new games, and the other is about the company's listing on Nasdaq," Maweli said to Mike Mikoyan straight to the point after getting off the car. Compared with the steady development of Google and VGuest, Blizzard games can be said to have jumped 3 levels. When his second and third games are released, and the company is listed again, it will be a money-making machine. It can sweep up tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in minutes. New games, and listing? After listening to Mawey's words, Blizzard President Mike Mikoyan asked with a happy expression. The company has indeed been developing new games during this period, but both the Diablo series and the Warcraft series are developing very slowly. It is not as efficient and refined as the Counter-Strike under Mawey's leadership. Well, I plan to develop a massively multiplayer online role-playing game based on the World of Warcraft. The name of the game is World of Warcraft, Mawey said, and asked the bodyguard to take out a stack of heavy documents from the car. On it were the themes, element, details, etc. of Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft, which he dictated and asked the typist to record. Since the records were rather scattered, they were all what Mawey thought of in his free time. So he was too lazy to sort them out, and just threw them all to Blizzard, letting them figure it out. World of Warcraft? Blizzard President Mike Mikoyan hesitated to take the documents handed over by the bodyguard. He didn't care that they were on the street, and he just flipped through them. The pile of information in his hand was just a pile of memories for Mawey. But for them, Blizzard, it was equivalent to the martial arts secrets in martial arts novels. Even peerless secrets. President Mike Mikoyan stared at it intently, not even having time to blink. Chairman Mawey, this information is really, Mike said to Mawey incoherently. Mawey would not be too complacent. After all, he was just repeating what others had said. There was nothing to be proud of. Develop the two games as soon as possible. Warcraft 3 first, followed by World of Warcraft. Mawey finished speaking and patted President Mike on the shoulder. Chapter 145. Ukraine wants to destroy its nuclear weapons? In 2 months, the annual meeting will be held. At that time, he will organize Google, V-Guest Video, Blizzard, Marvel Comics, etc. Then, he will book a tropical island for everyone to have fun and enjoy. Gifts and bonuses will definitely be given. It depends on who is lucky enough to win the prize. Understood. Chairman Mawey, I will do my best. Mike Mikoyan promised with full enthusiasm. With Mawey's secret book, Blizzard can avoid many detours in game development. After dealing with Blizzard's affairs, Mawey also prepared to take a plane back to Russia. But at this time, a piece of news from Ukraine immediately disrupted Mawey's return plan. It even made him smell a hint of crisis. This news is nothing else but that the EU has decided through negotiation to offer $25 million plus a loan of $500 million in an attempt to persuade Ukraine to destroy its existing 1,300 nuclear warheads, plus hundreds of 2 series strategic bombers, 230 Kh-22 air-launched cruise missiles, 483 X-55 cruise missiles and other weapons and equipment under the supervision of the EU, in exchange for EU assistance. The reason why the EU made such a request for assistance at this time is because a joint naval exercise between Ukraine and Russia 2 days ago accelerated their process. They want to disintegrate one side before the economies of Ukraine and Russia develop. The remaining side will be slowly consumed. Russia has always been a competitor of the EU, and the two sides dislike each other. Master, what should we do about this? If Ukraine really does this, then Butler Ivan asked Mawey with great concern. His young master had just become an ally with Ukraine, and the EU wanted to coerce and lure and use conspiracy and trickery to abolish the threat of Ukraine. Then, the young master's backers will be reduced by half. It's coming. It's coming. Mawey couldn't help thinking in his heart. This numbers layout has not even been completed by 1/3. The big tiger of the European Union has come with great momentum. The key is that they are not a country, but European powers such as Germany, France, Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. They are playing a team battle, while Russia and Ukraine are just two brothers teaming up, and the disadvantage is quite obvious at a glance. Including in Ukraine, there are many pro-European factions, many of whom are high-level Ukrainian officials, and have a certain proportion of votes. Just when Mawey was thinking about what he should do, a call from the Kremlin in Russia made him even more stressed. Hello, is this Mr. Mawey? This is Mihali. Do you have time now? I have a few questions to ask you. A low voice of a middle-aged man came from the other end of the satellite phone. The name Mihely, if Maweli remembered correctly, his position is the assistant to the Russian president for national security affairs, which can also be called the national security advisor. He is a senior assistant in the presidential executive office and the president's chief advisor on national security issues. The national security advisor is only loyal to the Russian president and is not influenced by any other department. Even the Russian parliament cannot interfere with his judgment and proposals. I have time now, Mr. Mihely, please go ahead. Maweli's right hand holding the satellite phone has begun to get wet. It is impossible to say that he is not nervous. The reason for his nervousness is not the national security advisor on the other end of the phone. It is because of this pile of national affairs, which he has never experienced before. He has not been mentally prepared yet. It suddenly hits his head. Who wouldn't be nervous? Mr. Maweli, have you received any news about the economic aid proposal proposed by the European Union to Ukraine? Mihely asked Maweli in a serious tone. I just received the news, Mr. Mihely. Maweli told the truth. Well, it's like this, Mr. Maweli. Actually, I called you on the order of President Putin. Now I want to ask you a very serious question. That is, what do you think about the EU's proposal? Mihely threw the question to Maweli, wanting to hear his point of view. Similarly, this is also the second test of the Russian president for him after the visit to the Kremlin. According to the current economic capabilities of Ukraine and Russia, both sides are in a difficult situation. Even if they want to help their allies, they don't have the strength. As a brother country, Russia does not want to watch Ukraine destroy itself. But if he wants him to take out funds to support Ukraine, it will be very difficult. After all, 40% of the people in Russia are currently living in poverty and can hardly guarantee even food and clothing. This proportion is still rising and is expected to reach 50% soon. My opinion, Mr. Mihely, I think Ukraine is a strong ally of our Russia. If conditions permit, it seems good to help. On this issue, Maweli's suggestions are just suggestions, and he has almost no say. Nothing else, Mr. Maweli? Mihely asked on the phone. Maweli's answer just now was very official. To put it bluntly, the Russian government also knows that Ukraine needs to be saved, but they can't think of any way to save it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so troublesome. At this moment, there are two paths in front of Maweli. One is to abandon Ukraine, let him accept the economic assistance of the European Union, and destroy nuclear weapons. As for the second, it is up to him to find a way to take on this arduous task. Don't let the EU's aid trick succeed. Whether choosing the first path or the second path, Maweli will have to bear huge risks. Abandoning Ukraine and destroying nuclear weapons means that Maweli has lost half of his backing. But if he wants to intervene, whether he succeeds or fails, it will definitely lead to the displeasure and sanctions of the European Union. If the prevention is successful, Maweli will benefit more than the disadvantages. At most, he will not have any dealings with the European Union in the future. But if the prevention fails, then he will be empty-handed. This is a very important choice. Maweli must think carefully and over again, otherwise he will be seriously injured. After half a minute of struggle and entanglement, Maweli, who finally considered it, said in a loud voice on the phone, Mr. Mihely, I think I have considered it. If His Excellency the President is willing to trust me, I promise him here, I, Maweli, will do my best to stop this conspiracy as much as possible. Maweli is going all out. Chapter 146, Destroy Nuclear Weapons? Don't be afraid, fight head on. Maweli is going all out. At this moment, he suddenly felt heroic. To live a new life, he must live a magnificent, unrestrained and unrestrained life. Being timid and fearful, worried about gains and losses, this is not Maweli's style. If you are a man, you should face it head on, don't be timid. At worst, you can get up again after failure, and 18 years later, you will be a hero again. I admire your responsibility, Mr. Maweli. If things succeed, we in the Russian Federation will never forget your contribution. National Security Advisor Mihely said solemnly on the phone. Maweli did this not only for Russia. He is not so saintly. His own development must be put first. He is distressed about Ukraine's nuclear warheads, strategic bombers, cruise missiles. Maybe he will do business in the future. If they are destroyed, who can he sell them to? If they are destroyed, Ukraine will not be his backer. Okay, Mr. Mihaly, I will try it. I hope I can succeed. This decision, which is more dangerous than gambling, is the first time Mavey has made it since his rebirth. To be honest, Mavey was not sure whether he could turn the tide and turn danger into safety. But if he won the bet, what he would win would be the deepest friendship between Ukraine and Russia. After all, in these two countries, many senior government officials and military generals are anti-Europeans. If Mavey could help them and disintegrate the EU's conspiracy, he would get their recognition and admiration in return. Hey, impulse is the devil. How could I be so confused and take on this shit? After the call, Mavey still felt like he was dreaming and couldn't recover. This time, he couldn't put his hands on his hips because the opponent was the EU. That was no joke. Master, we just received a call. The Ukrainian deputy prime minister wanted to make an appointment with you to see when you can meet her in the next 2 days. They said it was urgent and it was best to reply quickly. Mavey had just finished a call with the Russian National Security Advisor. The Ukrainian deputy prime minister invited him anxiously. It was obviously caused by the EU's economic aid. Mavey reluctantly took the phone again, and at this time, a middle-aged woman's voice came from the other end of the phone. Hello, is this Mr. Mavey? This is Snarana. I heard from Mr. Mihaly that maybe you have a way to help our Ukrainian government survive this nuclear destruction crisis. Snarana is the beautiful Prime Minister of Ukraine, also known as the Iron Lady of Ukraine, and a prominent figure in the Ukrainian political arena. She is a typical anti-European faction and is unwilling to accept the EU's aid, but the political wind direction changes quickly. Snarana has heard that some pro-Europeans are organizing forces to persuade others to vote in favor of accepting EU aid and destroying heavy weapons such as nuclear warheads when the parliament votes in 10 days and cling to the EU's thighs. Yes, maybe. Mavey's ears were a little hot from the phone call. This is really a disaster in the United States. Do you want it to be so exciting? Okay, Mr. Mavey, do you have time these 2 days? Can we meet and talk face to face? Snarana said directly and clearly on the other end of the phone. The firm tone made people feel an irresistible illusion. Then tomorrow. I'll take a plane here now. Mavey was not the kind of person who would procrastinate. He didn't like to drag things out, and it was better to deal with them as soon as possible. The EU's economic aid destroyed the nuclear bomb. To put it bluntly, it was the same as his arms trade. The only difference was that the latter was to give money to buy weapons. The former was to give money and destroy weapons. Okay, then I'll wait for your news. See you tomorrow. Snarana said on the phone. See you tomorrow. Mavey hung up the phone and took a plane directly to Ukraine. As it was late at night, he slept on the plane and the whole trip was very rushed. After waking up, when Mavey was sitting in the car at the airport, he had already found that the internet in the United States, Britain, France and other countries had spread news that the EU was going to aid Ukraine and destroy its nuclear weapons. The media and military professionals in many countries had different comments on this news. The United States remained neutral, just objectively analyzing Ukraine's current economic situation and how much of a threat these weapons he had posed to the European Union. Compared with the neutrality of the American media, the attitudes of the new online media in Germany, Britain, and France are completely different. Mavey randomly flipped through 2 articles and found that they all advocated the EU's generous rescue and wanted to help Ukraine. However, as a condition, Ukraine had to destroy its nuclear weapons and show that it was not a threat to the EU and was willing to develop good relations with it. Some well-known military experts also stood up to encourage the public, saying that this aid plan was almost a done deal and had a high probability of success. After all, Ukraine is a country with a really backward economy, and the annual maintenance costs of large weapons are so much that the government can collapse. These news trends have very well encouraged some angry young people on the internet, as well as saintly bitches and white lotus bitches. Many people left messages under the news, saying that it was really right for the EU to make such a decision. Ukraine is such a poor country, with so many nuclear weapons, 1,300 nuclear warheads. After the United States and Russia, it will be it. If it does not destroy its nuclear warheads, this country will be dragged down sooner or later. We, the European Union, have done a good thing. A White Lotus bitch netizen left a message under the news. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. I think $25 million in aid and $500 million in loans are too much. For a country like Ukraine, $15 million can feed more than half of its people. They should have destroyed their nuclear warheads long ago. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A brainless angry young man left a message on the internet without knowing anything. Maweli was in the car, watching the news and the comments. It feels that, no matter which country, cyber violence is always common. Those experts who sit on the wrong side of the butt, as well as keyboard warriors, always like to show off their IQ and presence on the internet. Maweli rubbed his eyes and turned off his laptop. Then he took a car directly to the Prime Minister's office of Ukraine and met with the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Snarana, who had spoken to him yesterday. Iron Lady Snarana has a vigorous and resolute style of doing things. As soon as Maweli arrived at her office, she said to Maweli directly without a few words of greeting, "Hello, Mr. Maweli, thank you for coming to meet me so promptly. Let's get straight to the point. The current situation in Ukraine is not optimistic." Chapter 147 Maweli's connections. Many high-level officials in Ukraine do not have much confidence in the future economy of the country. They want to destroy their own military power, reduce annual maintenance expenses, and join the arms of the European Union. History always repeats itself in a surprising way. Maweli notes why Ukraine chooses to destroy itself. It is all because they have no money. In addition to military industry and natural gas, they do not have the internet, entertainment industry, manufacturing industry and other industries developed like the United States to support the domestic economy. What favorable conditions did the European Union offer? $25 million in compensation, plus a loan of $500 million? Deputy Prime Minister Snarana. Maweli also asked directly to the point. What they have to do now is to help Ukraine build confidence. Otherwise, if they stop the European Union this time, NATO will come again next time, and it will be hard to prevent. Yes, Mr. Maweli, the European Union also promised us some economic cooperation in the future. These proposals made some high-level officials in the country very excited. After all, we in Ukraine can no longer afford these high maintenance costs. Deputy Prime Minister Snarana said worriedly. Do you believe in future economic cooperation, Deputy Prime Minister Snarana? Maweli asked Snarana tentatively. When dealing with these political bigwigs, one must be more careful. Otherwise, if the other party turns against you, you will be in trouble. Mr. Maweli, what do you mean by this? I personally don't believe it, but the pro-Europeans in the country are unwavering in their belief. Mr. Maweli, please don't doubt my position. I absolutely do not agree with economic assistance in the destruction of nuclear weapons. But there is no good way to stop it. Snarana showed a little dissatisfaction with Maweli's probing, but she thought about it and understood it. After all, this is the first time the two sides have met, and they have to face such a huge problem together. Whoever it is, they have to think about it. But from her point of view, Snarana can no longer think of a good solution. She can only temporarily pin her hopes on Maweli. After all, the parliament will vote in 10 days. So Mr. Maweli, do you have any good solutions? It's urgent. What we lack most now is time. I think you know this. In the political arena, most people's positions are very clear. As long as Maweli is sure of the other party's beliefs, there will be no worries in cooperation. So Maweli spoke lightly in front of the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister. Let me tell you this, Deputy Prime Minister Snarana. Before coming here, I made 2 calls overnight and got a pretty good response. It's just that now I have to wait for the other party's accurate response. Maweli revealed a little information to Snarana, but not all. The 2 calls he mentioned were naturally made to India, Malaysia, and the mysterious country from the east. Wait for an accurate response? When will that be, Mr. Maweli? You know, we only have 10 days. Also, are you sure that 2 calls can reverse the current situation? Snarana asked Maweli with a hint of anxiety. I think it should be possible. Maweli didn't dare to guarantee such a thing. 3 parts of hard work and 7 parts of fate. It all depends on fate. Deputy Prime Minister Snarana looked at Maweli seriously. She didn't know how important the 2 phone calls Maweli mentioned were. However, considering that there was no other way at the moment, she could only try her best and let it go. 3 days later, Maweli received his first call from the Indian military. "I'm sorry, Mr. Maweli, it took so long to contact you. It's like this. Our Indian military has no plans to purchase weapons and equipment recently. I'm really sorry." The Indian Navy Rear Admiral's apology came from the phone. Hearing this, Maweli could only sigh and answer, "Okay, thank you, Rear Admiral. Say hello to Admiral Sunibata for me." "Okay, you're welcome. Contact me later, Mr. Maweli. Arms business like this is not something you can do immediately. If you want to." Maweli also knows this. 2 days later, the Malaysian Air Force also called Maweli back. "Mr. Maweli, my friend, I'm so sorry. I was delayed a while ago. We asked about your matter a few days ago. At present, the budget for the Army and the Navy this year has been used up. If there is anything to add, it will be next year. I'm so sorry. It doesn't matter. Lieutenant General, we can do business later. By the way, please say hello to Minister Chiraman and Admiral Maharaj on my behalf." Maweli didn't know how to describe his mood at this time. Anyway, he felt a little disappointed. "Okay, Mr. Maweli, see you later. Let's talk later." As the satellite phone was hung up, Maweli's heart sank. There are still 5 days before the parliamentary vote. Once the vote is passed, everything will be settled. "Master, it's Deputy Prime Minister Snarana calling. Do you think, should I connect you?" Butler Ivan was also worried about his master. Although he also knew that life can never be smooth sailing and will experience setbacks. But this setback is too big. He will ruin Maweli's many efforts and plans. Please answer it. Maweli is a man of action and will not easily escape. 5 seconds later, Maweli answered the phone of Deputy Prime Minister Snarana. At this time, the 2 of them were very tacit and did not speak first. It seemed that they were waiting for the other party to say some good news. "You haven't contacted me since the last meeting. Does this mean that it's all over?" Snarana asked first to break the silence. From her voice, it sounds like she probably didn't sleep well in the past 5 days. She is a little hoarse and a little tired. There should be hope. Maybe a miracle will happen. Maweli didn't believe it when he said this. But what can he do? Now he can't dismantle the EU's conspiracy with his own strength. If this is destined, then he can only accept it. Well, I hope so. Snarana hung up the phone with a little disappointment after saying this. In this matter, she didn't blame Maweli for not being able to help. If you want to blame someone, blame Ukraine itself for not being able to maintain these nuclear weapons. 5 days later, it was the day for the Ukrainian parliament to vote. But Maweli's satellite phone was still silent. Deputy Prime Minister Snarana came to the parliament early. In another hour, the parliamentary vote will be held fairly and impartially under the chairmanship of the Chief Justice. Chapter 148, a critical moment, turning the tide. The entire voting process is estimated to take about half an hour to 45 minutes. After all the members have voted, the Grand Justice will announce the decision on the spot, based on the number of voters. This means that everything is irreversible. As a participant in this incident, although Maweli is not a Ukrainian member of parliament and cannot vote, he also came to the parliament early. He plans to accompany the anti-European members including Snarana, to hold on until the last moment. When Deputy Prime Minister Snarana saw Maweli in a suit in front of the parliament, she nodded to Maweli with a little fatigue and said, "Mr. Maweli, thank you for your efforts for our Ukraine in the past 10 days. Maweli shook his head after hearing this. To be honest, he didn't help at all. Deputy Prime Minister Snarana, how is the situation now? How many votes do those members close to the European Union have? As far as I know, it will not be less than 135 votes at least." Snarana replied with a little bitterness. The number of members of the Ukrainian parliament is fixed at 450. The number of members participating in the vote this time is 230. At least 135 people are willing to vote in favor, which means an absolute crush. After all, some of them will abstain from voting. There are even fewer people left to vote against. An hour later, the parliamentary vote officially began, and hundreds of Ukrainian MPs in formal attire gathered in the parliamentary auditorium, waiting for the Grand Justice to preside over the meeting. In a parallel world, the parliamentary vote in Ukraine in 2000 did not use electronic equipment. The Grand Justice called out the names of each MP present in the court, and asked them whether they would vote in favor or against. Before the parliament officially began, the Grand Justice had to call the roll on the spot according to the list of MPs. See who is here, and who is absent, all of which must be recorded. The dull and tedious roll call lasted for more than 10 minutes. There were 230 MPs, and no one was absent. Then the Grand Justice officially began to preside over the voting. Mr. Peter, do you agree or oppose the EU's proposal for economic aid to Ukraine? The Grand Justice asked word by word in the court. I agree, Your Honor. The MP named Peter is a loyal pro-European. After he voted, he even looked at Snarana, who was listening in. Next, Congressman Igor, are you in favor or against? The Grand Justice asked in the courtroom as a matter of routine. I'm in favor too, Your Excellency. Congressman Igor said in a resounding voice. As the congressman voted one by one, Snarana, who was sitting in the audience, had a very bad expression on her face. The reality was worse than she expected. Some congressmen who had said they would oppose, now turned against each other at this critical moment, and voted in favor. Among the 86 congressmen who voted first, 54 voted in favor, which was almost more than 60%. It seemed that the outcome was doomed, and there was no way to save the situation. However, just as Deputy Prime Minister Snarana's expression gradually dimmed, suddenly, a senior Ukrainian official pushed the door and walked into the auditorium and took the initiative to come to Snarana and whispered to her, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Mawey said that he has very important news and asked you to come out first. After listening to the official's whisper, Deputy Prime Minister Snarana suddenly had a premonition of a turnaround. She got up quickly and walked out in a hurry with the Ukrainian senior official. Seeing this scene, Councillor Peter, Councillor Igor and other pro-Europeans couldn't help but exchange glances at this time. They didn't know why the Deputy Prime Minister ran out in a hurry at this time. Is it because he was so angry that he had to go to the bathroom? The pro-Europeans exchanged glances with a smirk. In their opinion, the overall situation is now determined, and no matter what tricks Snarana plays, she can't reverse the final outcome. At the same time, in the corridor of the Ukrainian parliament, Deputy Prime Minister Snarana met Mawey, who asked her to come. What important news? Mr. Mawey? The parliamentary vote is about to end. Snarana asked Mawey with a slight breath. Mawey also knew that it was urgent, so he went straight to the point and said to Snarana, just now, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, I received a super order worth $2.5 billion for ships at your Black Sea shipyard. I think it should be able to reverse. Before Mawey could finish his words, he saw Deputy Prime Minister Snarana standing in front of him, and her heart almost skipped a beat in surprise. If this was not the Ukrainian parliament, Snarana at this moment really wanted to step forward and give Mawey a grateful hug. Really? Really? Mr. Mawey? Snarana asked Mawey in disbelief. Of course it's true, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. I have a fax document they just sent here, and it's stamped with the official seal of the country. Mawey said, and took out a white document directly from the file bag. The black and white words on it were clearly written, and the bright red national seal was also clearly stamped. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Snarana, a little excited to the point of shaking, reached out to take the document. Then she looked at Mawey with great gratitude. Later, she turned around and ran towards the Parliament Hall without saying thank you. Looking at Snarana jogging, Mawey suddenly had paranoid delusions. If Snarana ran to the corner and tore up the documents with one hand, it would be a masterpiece. Fortunately, this was just Mawey's paranoid delusion. Otherwise, he would be so angry that he would spit out blood. When Deputy Prime Minister Snarana, holding the documents, re-entered the Parliament Hall panting. At this time, the voting had been carried out for 2/3, and there were more than 70 members who had not voted. At this time, Snarana showed her Iron Lady style, went directly to the front of the hall, and said to the Chief Justice on the stage, Your Excellency, I ask you to use your power to immediately terminate and postpone this parliamentary vote. As soon as the resounding voice fell, the whole audience was in an uproar. No one could understand what was going on, especially those staunch pro-Europeans, who loudly opposed and questioned, "What reasons do you have? You want the Chief Justice to suspend this parliament? The voting has already reached 2/3. How can it be suspended just like that?" In foreign parliaments, quarrels and arguments often occur. When the quarrel becomes intense, the two sides may even fight each other. Silence. Silence. The Chief Justice ordered everyone to be quiet. Then he looked down at Snarana and then asked her in a deep voice, "What's the reason?" Deputy Prime Minister Snarana, "If the reason is not sufficient, then don't blame me. I didn't mean to be short and fragmentary. It took the author 3 or 4 hours to write these 2,000 words. It was very hard." Chapter 149 China rescues the market? Shocking everyone. Question mark? What's the reason? Deputy Prime Minister Snarana, "If the reason is not sufficient, then..." Before the judge finished asking questions, Deputy Prime Minister Snarana sent the fax in her hand to the court. And in a voice that everyone in the audience could hear, she said to everyone, "Your Excellency, this fax was just received by our Ukrainian government. The ship order on it is as much as $2.5 billion US, compared to the $25 million US in aid and the $500 million US in loans provided by the European Union. Which is better? I believe everyone should know it without me saying it," Snarana said excitedly in the court. Hearing this, the 230 members of the court opened their mouths in surprise. Obviously, they were shocked by this shocking figure. $2.5 billion for a ship order? Is this true? Oh my god. $2.5 billion? The EU is only willing to lend us $500 million. The key is that this money still has to be charged interest. Which country is it supporting such a large order from us? What Snarana just said was China. As the members of the House of Representatives were surprised, the expressions on the faces of pro-European members such as Peter and Igor were as ugly as if they had eaten a fly. The Ukrainian Grand Justice sitting in the hall carefully reviewed the documents submitted by Deputy Prime Minister Snarana. After carefully examining them for half a minute, he announced loudly to everyone, "Because the content of the fax has a very significant impact on this parliamentary vote. So on behalf of the Ukrainian Supreme Court, I announce that this vote will be postponed for 3 days." As the Grand Justice's verdict was issued, pro-European members such as Peter and Igor sat in their seats with a look of death, and they deeply felt that this EU aid might not be passed. A $2.5 billion ship order. If it was just a small amount, $500 million US, then they would have no problem dealing with it. But $2.5 billion. This gap really makes people feel powerless, and they have no fighting spirit at all. Deputy Prime Minister Snarana looked at the expressions on the faces of each member of parliament. At this moment, she suddenly remembered that she had not yet said solemnly to Mawey, "Thank you." If it were not for Mawey's timely assistance, October 12, 2000 would probably be the most shameful day for them in Ukraine. For a mere $500 million loan, plus $25 million in aid, the whole world laughed at them. 10 or 20 years later, I wonder how future generations will evaluate them, the people in power. I'm afraid there are more complaints and complaints than praise. After the parliament ended, Deputy Prime Minister Snarana found Mawey as soon as possible and thanked him in person. "Mr. Mawey, thank you so much. If you hadn't helped me in time and brought me the $2.5 billion order today, I'm afraid that Ukraine would have never recovered from this." Deputy Prime Minister Snarana held Mawey's hands and said many things to him earnestly. Compared with her domineering attitude in the parliament hall just now, Snarana showed her warm and soft side in front of Mawey. Deputy Prime Minister Snarana, thank you for the compliment. In fact, I was just lucky to get this order. Fortunately, it came in time, otherwise it would be troublesome. Mawey still answered with a humble and warm attitude. Judging from the expression of the beautiful Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister, this nuclear destruction crisis should have been passed without any danger. After all, even some pro-Europeans would feel shaken by the $2.5 billion ship order, not to mention those wavering parliamentarians. Thank you again, Mr. Mawey. You must come to my house for a simple meal someday. I will cook for you myself. By the way, I will introduce my daughter to you. You two can meet each other. I believe she will admire you very much." Deputy Prime Minister Snorana said to Maweli with a smile. "Okay, I will definitely keep the appointment, Deputy Prime Minister Snorana." Maweli could not refuse the kindness of others in person. Besides, strictly speaking, he did help Ukraine a lot. The ship order of $2.5 billion US, 3 Type 956 Sovereign E-class missile destroyers, and 2 Type 956M upgraded missile destroyers. Those were all sold by Maweli at a loss. According to the external selling price of the Russian Navy, the cheapest price of a Type 956 Sovereign E-class destroyer is $450 million US. The cheapest price of a Type 956M upgraded missile destroyer is $700 million US. In other words, the total price of this ship order, after the discount, should be $2.75 billion US. Now the price is $2.5 billion. Of course, it's an exaggeration to say that it's a loss. The cost of building a 956 type modern class destroyer is just over $50 million US, and the profit is still quite lucrative. It just depends on how to distribute it appropriately at that time. Maweli can't completely decide the price of the destroyer, so this is the lowest price he can arrange. Then it's a deal. I'll call you then. After saying this, Deputy Prime Minister Snorana took the initiative to hug Maweli. Then she turned and left gracefully. 3 days later, the parliamentary vote resumed, and after a tense, but not fierce resolution, the Ukrainian parliament, with 142 votes against, overwhelmed the 83 votes in favor, successfully prevented the country from destroying its nuclear weapons. Maweli, who was staying in the Ukrainian hotel, received the good news at the first time. At the same time, his worries were completely resolved. "Master, do you want to open a bottle of red wine to celebrate today?" Butler Ivan finally felt relieved. These days, he is more worried about Ukraine than Master Maweli. "Sure. Let's drink today." Maweli knew that he was completely targeted by the EU this time. The two sides had a grudge, and one day, his business in Europe would be strongly boycotted, sanctioned, by others. But then again, Russia has always been at odds with the EU. It is only a matter of time before it is boycotted. Anyway, we are now in a society ruled by law, and everything is based on the law. Even the EU cannot do whatever it wants. If the reason for the boycott is untenable, it will end up shooting itself in the foot. After all, Maweli is supported by the Russian government and the Ukrainian government. The EU sanctions Maweli, and Russia and Ukraine can also sanction merchants from EU countries. For example, retaliatory tariffs on European luxury goods, Chanel, Gucci, LV and other brands, all increase tariffs by 20% to 25%. Force these European merchants to put pressure on their own governments in turn. Anyway, the simple summary is that there are many tricks to playing the economic war. If you dare to mess with my people, I dare to mess with your people. Let's see who will be scared in the end. Anyway, the Russians, who grew up eating bears, will definitely not be afraid. Chapter 150, Rejecting the EU. A stone stirs up 1,000 waves. When the news that the Ukrainian parliament rejected EU aid was confirmed, it immediately caused a huge stir. Almost all the big and small countries in the world, especially the neighboring countries, paid more attention to it. After all, if Ukraine accepts aid, its military power will be completely useless. Neighboring Poland, Hungary, Romania, and Turkey no longer need to be afraid of it. But now, Ukraine has rejected EU aid. Such an unexpected decision makes neighboring countries and other countries in the world feel very uneasy. I don't know which direction the turbulent situation will evolve in next. In order to attract attention, some tabloids deliberately named the title, "World War III is about to start." Similar names. Washington Post, big news. Yesterday, the Ukrainian parliament officially announced that it rejected the EU's $500 million loan aid plan. It firmly retains its 1,300 nuclear warheads, 17 to-160 supersonic strategic bombers and other heavy weapons. The Times of Britain. Yesterday, the Ukrainian parliament officially rejected the EU's aid plan. According to reports, it was caused by the interference of the Russian government. Mawey was in front of the computer, looking at the newspaper news collected by his subordinates, and felt that the rumors seemed to be a bit exaggerated. What World War III? It's actually going to start. This is. Are you afraid of chaos in the world? Question mark. It's just an economic confrontation and friction between Ukraine and the European Union, but it can be linked to World War III. Is it necessary to be so imaginative? After all, it's still the British who understand things and know that this is a good thing done by the Russians. To be precise, it's the good thing done by Mawey, a Russian. After reading these newspapers collected from all over the world, Mawey opened the webpage to see what comments the netizens from various countries would make now. However, what Mawey didn't expect was that when he opened the webpage and refreshed the comments, he found that there was not a single comment in the news comment area of Britain, France, Germany and other countries. It was as clean as if it had been washed. Later, I learned that there were too many comments advocating the Third World War on the internet. Therefore, the relevant departments of the governments of various countries had to rectify the rumors on the internet to prevent the entire country and the people from falling into panic. Otherwise, the things that happened at that time would not only not affect Ukraine, but would also make them miserable. For example, street marches, collective strikes. Whether it is anti-war or war, they are all things that foreigners like to do, which is very troublesome. The 2.5 billion ship order that Mawey fought for was only a part of what the other party wanted to buy. The subsequent Varyag aircraft carrier order is still in the approval process. It is expected that it will be formally submitted to the Ukrainian government within the next 3 months. Mr. Yuan, thank you very much for your help this time. Mawey expressed his gratitude to the other party using a satellite phone. If it weren't for Mr. Yuan's use of his connections, the review process would have been much faster. Otherwise, the 2.5 billion order from the Black Sea shipyard may not be approved until at least 1 month later. You're welcome. It's a piece of cake. You have to build those destroyers well and make sure they pass the quality test. Yuan Leo said on the other end of the phone. Please rest assured, Yuan Leo. There will be no problem with the quality. Mawey assured the other party. This batch of ships is the first order for the cooperation between the two parties. If there is a problem with the quality, it will be difficult to cooperate in the future. After the overall situation was settled, Mawey was also ready to leave Ukraine and return to Russia to rest for 2 days. But just when he was about to ask the captain to arrange the flight, on the mobile phone, a familiar phone number suddenly popped up. Hello. Mawey knew whose number it was. Are you free tonight? A woman's pleasant voice came from the other end of the phone. Yes. Where do we meet? Mawey asked the woman. I'll come to you when the time comes. The woman said and hung up the phone. Obviously she knew Mawey's address very well. The person who called was none other than Admiral Petrovich's daughter, Shiknaya, who had learned the inside information of the parliament. Since that night on China King Island, Shiknaya originally didn't want to have any contact with Mawey. She just regarded that crazy night as a memory of the two. But when Shiknaya learned that the nuclear destruction crisis in Ukraine was solved with the help of Mawey, the heart of the beautiful major was suddenly shaken. Sure enough, women are really an unpredictable creature. I really don't know what they think about all day long. At 7 o'clock in the evening, in Mawey's luxury suite, Shiknaya was still wearing her Ukrainian military uniform. When she saw Mawey this time, she didn't speak, but just stood in front of Mawey and kept looking at him. Facing the gaze of the beautiful officer, Mawey didn't know what was wrong with her. Did he hurt her by using too much force in the Chinese hotel? But it didn't seem to be the case. As an experienced driver, his movements were quite gentle. This was absolutely certain. In order to break the awkwardness, Mawey coughed lightly and said to Shiknaya, ahem, we have met. Why are you just standing there without talking? Before he could finish his words, Shiknaya, who was wearing a military uniform, just like last time in Qingdao, China, came forward and hugged Mawey without saying anything. Then she kissed him passionately. After a night, when Mawey woke up, Shiknaya disappeared again. This time, she didn't even leave a note. On the contrary, she quietly put the diamond necklace on her neck next to Mawey's pillow. It was completely unknown what this beautiful Ukrainian officer meant. Was she going to treat someone as a long-term asterisk, keeping a duck, and then vent a lust, give money and leave? Mawei was too lazy to care about the woman's strange thoughts. He put the necklace on the bedside table and then fell asleep again. From now on, Mawei, is a thorn in the eyes and flesh of the European Union. He could enjoy it for as long as he could. He didn't care. 2 weeks later, according to the contract, Party B first allocated $650 million to the Ukrainian government as a deposit. This money alone would allow Moy's Black Sea shipyard to make a profit of nearly $300 million. The cost of 5 destroyers was $350 million, not to mention the subsequent $1.85 billion, which was all net profit. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.